Chapter 1743. After that, just as Noah had predicted, because Fairy Tale had regained the glory of being the #1 guild in the Fiori Kingdom, many magic shooters came to join the guild the next day. Noah did not accept all the magic shooters who came to join the guild because of its reputation. Instead, he went through a series of tests. The content of the tests was not strength. In fact, whether or not one had strength was secondary. For Fairy Tale, the most important thing was not strength, but compatibility. At the very least, Noah did not want his guild, which was full of positive energy, to be turned into a swamp by a motley crew. Therefore, Noah accepted all the magic shooters who were compatible with the members of the guild. However, those with bad natures were all mercilessly thrown out of the door by Noah. He did not show them any mercy at all. This method naturally caused a lot of criticism in the beginning. However, there was one time when a group of magic shooters who were rejected by Noah decided to take advantage of the night to sneak into the guild to wreak havoc as revenge. The next day, all the residents of Magnolia found out. These guys were stripped of all their clothes and hung in the city center for the whole city to see. There was also a recording crystal beside them that recorded the whole process of these guys trying to wreak havoc on Fairy Tale. It was only now that everyone knew the criteria for Fairy Tale selection. They no longer had any objections to it and even started to promote it, causing Fairy Tale's popularity to become more and more prosperous. Apart from that, commissions from all over the kingdom were gradually finding their way to Fairy Tale, allowing the guild's career to return to its peak, perhaps even surpassing it. Under such circumstances, in addition to the 30 million J reward for winning the Great Demon Combat Arts competition, the guild's operations were finally on the right track. Just like that, a week passed in the blink of an eye as the whole Fairy Tale gradually got on the right track. Today was the day of Noah's wedding. Wow! In a room in Strauss House, Lucy and Snow, who were dressed in bridesmaid attire, looked at the two girls standing in front of them and couldn't help but gasp in amazement. She was wearing a wedding dress that was as white as snow. They were holding extremely beautiful flowers in their hands. Mira and Lisanna stood side by side in front of a full-body mirror. Looking at themselves in the mirror, their delicate faces looked a little dazed, but they couldn't hide the happiness between their brows no matter how hard they tried. Lisanna, in particular, looked at herself in the mirror in her wedding dress, her eyes a little moist. Big sister Mira. Lisanna's eyes were slightly red as she spoke. Am I dreaming? Looking at Lisanna like this, Mira smiled knowingly. She reached out and gently hugged Lisanna, patting her sister's back as she spoke softly. Lisanna will become the most beautiful bride today. This is definitely not a dream. Unlike the gentle and caring Mira, Lisanna's maiden's heart. Myra's greatest wish was to live happily with Noah for the rest of their lives. Lisanna's greatest wish was to become Noah's bride. One yearned for the days to come. The other yearned for the moment when she became the bride of her sweetheart. Although the things they yearned for were different, there was no doubt that these two sisters were in love with Noah. Today was the wedding of these two sisters and Noah. Lisanna, who had always dreamed of becoming Noah's bride, had finally waited for this day to come. Thus, looking at herself in the mirror in her wedding dress, Lisanna couldn't help but feel the emotions in her heart. Her eyes really did turn red. All right, today is a happy day. You can't have this expression. Mira cupped Lisanna's face and gently wiped away some of the tears in her sister's eyes. However, her own eyes were also a little wet. It's okay. Lisanna will definitely be happy in the future. Sister promises you. Yes. Lisanna nodded heavily and smiled. The same goes for Sister Mira. You will definitely be happy with me. That's right. Mira smiled gently. We will definitely be happy together. Seeing the Strauss sisters hugging each other tightly to vent the emotions in their hearts, Lucy and Shirley looked at each other and smiled. All right. It's not like you two have to separate. In the future, you will always live together. Don't make it seem like you are going to separate. Lucy clapped her hands and said with a smile. Noah is already waiting for you. Brides, don't let your groom wait too long. That's right. Shirley nodded. Lord Noah definitely doesn't want to see Lady Mira and Lady Lysana's eyes red. You two can't cry. Mira and Lysana looked at each other and smiled. They nodded and separated from each other. Then, Lucy and Shirley stepped forward at the same time and each of them held the hands of the two brides. Let's go. Mira and Lysana tightened the bouquet in their hands and took a deep breath. After a while, they nodded. At the same time, in one of the guild's rooms, Noah was also prepared. Phew, wearing a suit as white as snow, Noah constantly checked if there was anything messy on his body while nervously asking his companions in the room. This should be fine, right? This is the 4th time you've asked this, Gray said helplessly. It's really fine. It's neat enough. It won't be embarrassing. Apart from Gray, Laxus was also present. How surprising. Raxus made a rare teasing remark. I didn't expect you to be nervous. Hearing this, Noah couldn't help but smile bitterly. It had to be said that Noah was more or less nervous. In the past, let alone a small wedding, Noah had experienced even bigger occasions. However, for some reason, at this time, Noah couldn't help but feel nervous. Well, after all, it's a matter of a lifetime. Gray spread his hands and said to Noah. Even if it's you, it's inevitable that you'll be nervous, right? Maybe that's the reason. Noah adjusted his collar a little, then seemed to think of something and looked at Gray. By the way, did you find Naz? Since the last time in the guild, Naz had threatened to prepare for the duel with Noah and rushed out of the guild. This guy had disappeared for a whole week, completely disappearing without a trace. In order to find Naz, everyone went to his house and even asked around the city. In the end, they found out that Naz didn't return home at all this week. Instead, he seemed to have left Magnolia and entered a deep mountain. In order not to let Naz miss his wedding, Noah had asked some of the new members in the guild to go to the mountains to find him. Unfortunately, it seemed that they didn't find him at all. That guy, his mind is probably full of the duel with you now. How can he still remember your wedding? Gray curled his lips. He should have forgotten long ago, right? Well, he's Naz after all. Laxus said so generously. If not, then he's not Naz. Really? Noah said with regret. In other words, Naz won't come to my wedding, right? For that idiot, a wedding is obviously not as important as a meal. Gray patted Noah on the shoulder. You don't have to take it to heart. I know, I just feel that it's a pity. Noah smiled slightly. Besides, Naz is now carefully preparing for the duel with me. I have nothing to complain about. That's good. Laxus glanced at the clock on the wall and said. It's about time. It's time to go. Hearing this, Noah took a deep breath like Mira and Lysana and then nodded. Then let's go. Chapter 1744. In Magnolia, there was a church. The size of the church was considered large, so the residents of Magnolia called it the cathedral. However, the location of the cathedral was a little remote, and it was not very lively on normal days. Sometimes, not many people would go there. But today, the cathedral seemed to be quite lively. Ding dong ding dong ding dong ding dong. The melodious sound of the bell echoed throughout the entire cathedral. At this moment, the sound of cannon salutes rang out. At this moment, the people were cheering. In such a lively atmosphere, in front of the cathedral, the sorcerers from Fairy Tale were all dressed in formal attire. Each of them had a smile on their faces, and they held wine glasses in their hands as they laughed and chatted with each other. In addition to the sorcerers from Fairy Tale, many of the residents of Magnolia had also heard the news and gathered around the periphery of the cathedral to watch. It caused a lot of chatter, and it was very lively. In fact, this kind of liveliness could have been multiplied several times, or even dozens of times. After all, the person getting married today was not an ordinary person. He was a hero who saved the country a week ago, and received the title of one of the 10 Saint Sorcerers, the strongest sorcerer in the continent. He saved the entire Fiori kingdom, and even the entire world. He defeated Iconaroglia and single-handedly stopped a large number of dragons. The sorcerers of the other guilds in the kingdom were in awe of him. The princess of the kingdom was in awe of him. If Noah really wanted to hold a grand wedding, then it would not be strange if all the famous guilds in the kingdom, or even the princess herself, came to congratulate him, let alone the sorcerers of fairy tale. However, Mira and Lisanna did not insist on the size of the wedding. Whether the wedding was grand or not was not a very important matter to the sisters. The two girls only wanted a beautiful wedding, and it was enough for them to become Noah's bride with the blessings of everyone. Therefore, only the members of Fairy Tale were invited to attend today's wedding. Of course, generally speaking, it was enough to invite an entire guild to a wedding. After all, a large magic guide guild would have at least hundreds of members, or even thousands of members. Fairy Tale, on the other hand, had just regained the glory of being the number one guild in the Fiori Kingdom, but the number of members in the guild had already exceeded 300. With so many people attending the wedding, it was more than enough. In addition, the residents of Magnolia came to liven things up, making the wedding quite lively. Congratulations, President Makarov. Congratulations, congratulations. My grandson is finally married. And he married two at once. You're really capable. One by one, the magic shooters toasted and congratulated Makarov, who was also dressed in formal attire. Makarov's old face was full of smiles as he laughed unreservedly while returning the toasts. Glass after glass of wine was poured into Makarov's stomach, causing Makarov's face to turn red. However, Makarov didn't mind at all. Instead, he drank more and more happily, causing people to worry that this old man would pass out drunk before the bride and groom arrived. At least, Makao and Wakaba expressed their worries. I say, President, no, it should be the previous president, shouldn't you stop? Makao advised. Your grandson hasn't arrived yet, and the wedding has just begun. If you pass out drunk now, what will happen later? Yes, yes. Kana hugged a wine barrel as she fiercely gulped down wine while speaking drunkenly. You can get drunk at any time, but not today. Former president, it's time for you to restrain yourself. Before saying that, shouldn't you put down that ridiculously large wine barrel in your hands? Wakaba couldn't help but complain. You're not convincing at all, right? Well, don't worry, I'm fine. Makarov patted his chest and said with his head held high. Before I see my great-grandson's face, I, Makarov, won't die like this. No, 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 I'm just telling you to stop drinking, not to die. Makao said loudly. So to you, not drinking is the same as dying? It's fine, it's fine. Makarov didn't mind Makao's words at all. He continued to drink happily, and his face became redder and redder. Seeing this scene, even Wendy expressed her worry. President Makarov, are you sure you're fine? I feel that if he continues to drink like this, there will definitely be a problem. Levi sighed. By the way, why aren't the bride and groom here yet? I heard that they're on their way. Julian quickly said. They should be here soon. Hurry up and end this wedding. Gadjalus said with some boredom. Noah, that guy. Not only did he prepare for the wedding, but he didn't prepare any iron. What kind of banquet is this? Is that so? Lily was speechless. I don't think anyone would prepare iron for a wedding banquet. As the crowd continued to clamor, at a certain moment, outside the cathedral, an extremely luxurious carriage slowly drove in amidst the clear sound of wheels. Seeing the carriage, the crowd's expression brightened, and they shouted loudly. They're here, they're here. The bride and groom are here. They're finally here. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Continuous cheers began to ring out, causing the saluting cannons to be pulled and set off in midair. Balloons were also released into the air, floating towards the clouds. The scene was quite beautiful. Then, under the crowd's cheers and firecrackers, the luxurious carriage stopped in front of the cathedral. The next moment, the door of the carriage opened. Inside, Noah, who was dressed in a pure white suit, walked down. He raised his head and looked around. A smile slowly appeared on his face. Oh, 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 oh. The crowd cheered loudly. Even the residents of Magnolia cheered and gave Noah their best wishes. Noah raised his hand and waved at the people around him. Then, he turned around and extended his hand into the carriage. Both of her hands, which were wearing white lace gloves made of silk, immediately reached out from the carriage and placed them in Noah's hands. Under Noah's lead, she alighted from the carriage. Of course, the people who came out were Mira and Lisanna. Oh, looking at the two girls who were wearing a pure white wedding dress and holding bright flowers in their hands, with an unconcealable smile on their faces and some shyness and nervousness on their faces, many people in the crowd let out sighs of amazement. When were women at their most beautiful? Everyone had their own opinion on this question. However, everyone present had the same thought in their minds at this moment. That was, at this moment, Mira and Lisanna, in their pure white wedding gowns, were undoubtedly the most beautiful in their lives. Mira was the most popular top model. When she wore a wedding gown, she was so beautiful that people could not take their eyes off her. Lisanna did not have Mira's gentleness and sweetness, but she was more pretty, cute, and mischievous. When she wore a wedding gown, she was equally beautiful. The most beautiful appearance of the two sisters was displayed in front of everyone. How could they not be stunned? In response, Mira and Lisanna only held one of Noah's hands each. Under Noah's lead, they walked along the red carpet, step by step, with smiles on their faces. There was only one person at the front of the red carpet. That person was Makarov. The blush on Makarov's face had disappeared without a trace, as if his performance had been fake. He looked at the couple walking slowly towards him, his face full of gratification. In this way, Noah brought the two brides to Makarov. Their eyes met. Chapter 1745. Looking at the short and old Makarov with a face full of wrinkles, Noah couldn't help but feel sour in his heart. He still remembered that when he was just born and entered this world, Noah didn't have anything other than the appearance and intelligence of a 10-year-old child. He didn't have parents who gave birth to him and didn't have an innocent childhood. He didn't have any memories of being alive and didn't even have a clue of where he came from. His language was completely different from the people of this world. He didn't have any decent clothes on him. As if he was abandoned, Noah was sent to this world and appeared in the forest alone. Everything around him was unfamiliar to Noah at that time. The wild beasts and magical beasts in the forest even treated him as food and were in a very dangerous situation. It was at that time that Makarov found Noah and brought Noah to Fairy Tale. He took him as his adopted grandson and raised Noah. According to Gaia and Alea, Makarov finding Noah and letting Noah join Fairy Tale seemed to have been arranged by the world. However, this didn't mean that Makarov's feelings for Noah were fake. Makarov wasn't on guard against Noah, who had an unknown background and identity. He also didn't care about it and treated Noah as his own grandson. He treated Noah as if he was his own grandson. At that time, Noah's magic was too strong and his magic went berserk many times, almost destroying the guild. However, Makarov didn't have any ill feelings towards Noah because of this. Instead, he taught Noah nicely. Logically speaking, people like Noah who went berserk from time to time and brought disaster to their surroundings should avoid him and treat Noah as a monster and expel him or even kill him. However, Makarov always believed in Noah's character. He believed that power itself wasn't wrong, but the person who used it was at fault. He didn't have the slightest bit of impatience and taught Noah, guiding Noah to the right path. Compared to Gaia and Alea, who were chosen by many worlds to be Noah's guides, Makarov was Noah's true guide. Without Makarov, there would be no Noah today. To this day, it had only been about 10 years since he first met Makarov and joined Fairy Tale based on Noah's sense of time. In 10 years, it was this old man, who was twice as short as Noah, who had raised Noah into an adult. Thinking of the past, Noah had the urge to cry at this moment. Noah could tell everyone with certainty that he had never wanted to cry in his life. However, at this moment, the emotions in Noah's heart were surging, causing his eyes to turn red bit by bit. Perhaps because they felt Noah's emotions, Mira and Lisanna hugged Noah's arm tightly and looked straight at Noah's face, silently comforting him. Noah looked at Makarov and said with a hoarse voice, "Grandfather." This call made Makarov's eyes turn red. However, the smile on Makarov's face didn't fade. It was still as bright as ever. "You don't have to say anything." Under Noah's gaze, Makarov said with a calm smile, "Grandfather is proud of you." With that, Noah finally couldn't hold back the emotions in his heart. He couldn't help but close his eyes as tears rolled down his cheeks. Without a doubt, that was the only time in his life that Noah shed tears. Of course, no one had seen Noah like that. However, those who saw Noah shed tears weren't surprised at all. Instead, they smiled as if they understood. Looking at Noah's tearful appearance, Makarov held back his tears and stepped forward with a smile. "Today is the day you get married. You can't face everyone with this expression." "I'm not crying." Noah didn't wipe away his tears. For the first time, he acted like a stubborn child and said this. "It's just the wind, you child." Makarov couldn't help but laugh. Then, he looked at Mira and Lisanna and said softly, "I'll leave Noah in your hands." Mira and Lisanna tightened their grip on Noah's arm. Under Makarov's gaze, they nodded heavily and said in unison, "We will take good care of Noah, President." "Are you still calling me President?" Makarov smiled. "You should change the way you address me." Hearing this, Mira and Lisanna both blushed and lowered their heads. "Grandfather." "Good. Good." Makarov laughed out loud and shouted at Noah. "Noah, you have to treat your two brides well. If I find out that you bullied them, I won't let you off. Do you understand?" "I know." Noah held Myra's and Lisanna's hands tightly as he looked at his two brides and declared, "I will definitely make them happy." Mira and Lisanna's faces bloomed with smiles. Makarov nodded in satisfaction. He looked around, spread his arms, and shouted to the people around him, "Everyone, please give our warmest blessings to our bride and groom." As soon as he finished speaking, clap, 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 clap. A burst of warm applause sounded from the surroundings. The group of magic shooters belonging to Fairy Tale were also shouting non-stop. "Noah, don't bully our Mira-chan. Don't bully Lisanna-chan either. Remember to be happy. Bastard. Damn it. I want to get married. Save it. Ha 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 ha." Kind laughter and shouts sounded from the surroundings. Along with the warm applause, they were dedicated to Noah. Noah, Mira, and Lisanna looked at each other and smiled tacitly. Immediately, Noah let go of Mira and Lisanna's hands. He took a step forward and came to Makarov's side. He turned around and looked at his two brides. At the side, Wendy was holding a box with a nervous look on her face as she walked to Noah's side under everyone's gaze. "Brother Noah." Wendy raised her head and looked at Noah with a cute smile. In the box in Wendy's hands, there were 2 diamond rings. Both Mira and Lisanna's gazes were immediately drawn to the 2 rings. Unlike the engagement ring, this time, Noah had specially asked someone to make a new wedding ring. Compared to the 2 engagement rings that were made in a hurry before, the 2 wedding rings in front of him were much better in terms of workmanship and quality. The exquisite shape and the resplendent diamonds attracted the hearts of all the girls present. "So beautiful." Lucy couldn't help but murmur. "Yes." Shwenai agreed softly. "It really is beautiful." Even Alusha couldn't help but praise. As for Lebby, Kana, and Julianne, they had already begun to whisper to each other, praising the 2 rings almost non-stop. Naturally, Mira and Lisanna were also captivated by the 2 wedding rings. Ahem. Makarov pretended to be serious and coughed. "All right, let's have our brides exchange rings." Noah turned his head and took out the 2 rings from the box in Wendy's hands. He smiled at Mira and Lisanna. "My brides, please stretch out your hands." Mira and Lisanna subconsciously extended their hands to Noah. Holding the hands of the two beautiful brides, Noah gently put the wedding rings on their ring fingers. Warm applause rang out once more. Mira and Lisanna retracted their rings and couldn't help but throw themselves into Noah's arms. Noah hugged his two brides tightly. Amidst the warm applause, he felt a warmth in his heart. At that moment, Noah, Mira, and Lisanna had finally come to fruition and become a true husband and wife. Chapter 1746. Chirp 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 chirp. When the sun rose into the sky and illuminated the land, the melodious chirping of birds echoed under the clouds, announcing the beginning of a beautiful morning. Under the bright sunlight, Magnolia was still sitting on the ground as usual. On the streets, people came and went. Beside the stalls, people were making a lot of noise. Shouts and noises rang out from the relatively large city. Mixed with the melodious chirping of birds, it actually gave people a sense of tranquility. In such a magnolia, on a busy street facing the sea, there was a house. The size of the house was comparable to a small villa, and it looked quite luxurious. At least, it wouldn't be strange if there were maids and servants coming in and out of the house. However, in fact, there were only 3 people living in this house. Although there were only 3 people, these 3 people were newlyweds. In the room of the newlyweds, the 2 young girls who had just become wives woke up early in the morning. They glanced at their husbands who were sleeping next to them, and then they tiptoed out of the bed at the same time. They went out of the room and entered the kitchen, and began to busy themselves with sounds and laughter. Not long after, Noah also woke up amidst the waves of sweet laughter. He yawned and put on his clothes. After which, he stretched his waist and walked out of the room. Gotcha! The sound of the door opening attracted the attention of the 2 sisters who were busy in the kitchen. Brother Noah. Lisanna was the first to greet Noah. Good morning. Good morning. Noah returned the greeting, but still looked a little sleepy. Good morning, Mira. Good morning. Mira chuckled softly and said in a gentle and considerate manner. The breakfast will be ready soon, just wait for a while. It's all right, the guild is gradually getting on the right track. Even if I don't stay in the guild all the time, there won't be any problems, Noah said lazily as he walked towards the sofa and sat down. So, you guys just have to take it slow. Mira looked at Noah's lazy expression and smiled helplessly. On the other hand, Lisanna puffed up her cheeks and said with some dissatisfaction. Big brother Noah, have you become a little lazy recently? Who's to blame for this? Noah said grumpily. Whether it's cleaning or cooking, all the household chores are taken care of by you 2 sisters. Even when I take a bath at night, you 2 will help me run the bath water. I have nothing to do at home, so how can I not be lazy? But don't you have a lot of things to deal with in the guild? Mira asked, chuckling. We were worried that you would be exhausted, so we didn't want you to be busy. Besides, family matters are what we should do. Big brother Noah, you don't know how lucky you are. Lisanna raised the spatula in her hand, looking indignant. With me and sister Mira as your wives, what's there to be dissatisfied with? I've never said that I was dissatisfied, right? Noah said with a bitter smile. Even if there's something I'm dissatisfied with, it's not because you 2 are so virtuous. Instead, shouldn't you change the way you call him, Big Brother Noah? What does it matter? Big Brother Noah is Big Brother Noah, Lisanna said matter-of-factly. I've been calling him that since I was young. Is there a problem? There's a big problem. Noah rolled his eyes. If others know that I let my wife call me Big Brother, how will they look at me? Is that so? Lisanna tilted her head and asked in puzzlement. But they're used to it. Pfft. Mira couldn't help but laugh out loud, and she couldn't help but say this. Besides, even if others look at Noah differently, it'll still be interesting. Just like that, Noah, Mira, and Lisanna went about their own business while casually chatting about their daily lives. That scene gave people the feeling that the 3 of them had lived together for a long time. However, there was nothing strange about it. Although it was Noah's first time living with Mira and Lisanna, the three of them were childhood playmates who grew up together. They knew each other very well, and there was no need for them to be afraid. Furthermore, Mira and Lisanna were biological sisters who had been living together since they were young. There was no place that they were unfamiliar with. Therefore, there was no sense of awkwardness when the three of them lived together. Furthermore, Mira and Lisanna had been living together with Elfman in the first place. To Mira and Lisanna, it was just a change of residence. Furthermore, the person living with them had changed from a younger brother to a husband. Looking at the two newlyweds who were busy in the kitchen, Noah smiled. After a moment of silence, he suddenly spoke. I plan to leave the guild for a period of time tomorrow. During this period, the two of you have to take good care of yourselves. That one sentence made Mira and Lisanna stop what they were doing. Mira and Lisanna had already known that Noah planned to leave for a period of time to settle some matters. Hence, the two of them weren't too surprised. As for being reluctant to part with him, that wasn't it. After all, as a magic shooter, there were times when he had to leave for a long period of time to complete a mission. Take Kildas for example, he would usually leave for 2 to 3 years. Just like a homeless child, there was no way to keep him. Noah only planned to leave for a month. As a magic shooter, it was considered a short period of time. Hence, Mira and Lisanna weren't reluctant to part with him. However, they still turned to look at Noah. Are you planning to leave tomorrow? Mira asked thoughtfully. Then we'll help you settle the matters in the guild. Yes, Lisanna said dutifully. In the past, I've been helping the president. No, helping Grandpa with the guild's matters. Also, Grandpa sometimes has to go out for regular meetings. Sister Mira and I are handling the guild's matters. There won't be a problem if you leave it to us. I just want you guys to help me deal with the guild's affairs for the time being, Noah said, smiling. However, if you're too busy, you can't tire yourself out. It's okay. If it's really necessary, Shu and I and Alusha will help us too. You can rest assured and settle your own matters. Mira smiled gently. Do you need to pack anything? Just in case, help me prepare some food and clothes. Noah raised his hand. Suddenly, a ray of light flashed in his hand and turned into a card. This gift card can be used to store food and clothes. It can also store items like magic crystals, magical weapons, and even magic-guided weapons. Just help me put some food, water, and clothes in. In other words, it's something like a storage space for magical equipment, right? Lisanna stepped forward and took the gift card from Noah's hand. She flipped through it curiously while praising it. It can also store food and water. With this, it'll be much more convenient even if it's a long-term mission. Now, I even use this to store Aster and Athena's elven equipment. Noah shrugged. Although the two of them were very dissatisfied at first. Mira and Lisanna couldn't help but laugh when they heard that. Have a good rest today, Mira said. Food, water, and clothes. We'll prepare them for you. Okay. Noah leaned on the sofa comfortably, his expression becoming lazy again. Sorry to trouble you, my wives. The two sisters immediately smiled like flowers. Obviously, they were very happy with Noah's words. Oh, right. Lisanna suddenly remembered something and asked. Then, what about the duel between Brother Noah and Naz? The duel with Naz? Noah opened his eyes, the lazy expression on his face fading away. Then, Noah took out a piece of paper from his pocket. There was a line of words written on the paper. Looking at the words, Noah slowly raised the corner of his mouth. Don't worry, before leaving tomorrow, I'll finish it. Chapter 1747. The next day. In front of his house, Noah put on his coat and turned to look behind him. Mira and Lisanna were standing side by side. Brother Noah. Lisanna handed the dark gold gift card to Noah. Food, water, and clothes are all prepared. The amount is enough to last you 3 months. You can use it without worry. 3 months? Noah took the gift card and was a little surprised. Isn't it a little too much? There's no harm in being prepared. 3 months' worth is more than enough even if Big Brother Noah needs to give it to others. Of course, it's best to prepare as much as possible at a time like this, Lisanna said. These are small matters. The most important thing is that Brother Noah must take good care of himself. Lisanna is right. Mira stepped forward and tidied up Noah's collar in an extremely virtuous manner. No matter what, the most important thing is to take good care of yourself. Don't force yourself. I know. I won't let you worry. Noah smiled. I'll leave the matters of the guild to you for the time being. The two sisters nodded and stepped forward at the same time. One on the left and one on the right, they gave Noah a peck on the cheek and left a sentence behind. Be careful on the road. Noah nodded, stretched out his hands, and hugged his two wives. He kissed them on the forehead before separating. Then, I'll be going out. After that, Noah opened the door and slowly left the city under the gaze of Mira and Lisanna. Mira and Lisanna watched Noah leave until Noah's back disappeared from their sight. The two sisters then relaxed, smiled at each other, and entered the house. On the other hand, after Noah left Magnolia, he did not immediately return to the world between worlds. Instead, he identified the direction and fixed his eyes on a tall mountain. At the next moment, Noah's figure turned into a stream of light and soared into the sky, flying towards the mountain. Who? At the top of the mountain, there was a cold wind that seemed to be spiraling. It blew past, bringing up a cloud of sand and dust that was blown into the distance. In the direction of the dust, Naz was turning his arms as if he was exercising his body. From time to time, he would jump up and down as if he was preparing for exercise. In fact, Naz was indeed doing preparatory exercises. Because, next, Nazi needed to do a lot of exercise. In order to maintain his physical condition at the best level, the always slow-witted Naz also began this method that others didn't think was his style. However, such a performance also proved how serious Naz was about the upcoming duel. Not long after, the opponent that Nazi had carefully prepared for finally arrived. Phew! In the sharp sound of breaking the air, a streamer of light burst from the horizon. It was like a thunderbolt, fiercely falling on the ground. With a pang sound, it stirred up a thick cloud of dust. At the same time, Naz suddenly stopped the movements of his hands. His eyes seemed to be burning with flames, surging with an extremely bright expression. Immediately, under Naz's gaze, the thick sand in front of him slowly dissipated, revealing a figure in the air. Sorry, Naz. Noah raised his head and met Naz's gaze. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. I'm not too late, right? I'm too late. Naz grinned and said so. I'm already burning up. In that case, when you sent the challenge letter to me, you should have marked the time on it, right? Noah took out a piece of paper from his arms and said helplessly. In the end, you only told me a vague location and didn't even mark the time. Who knows if I will make you wait for a long time. Ah. Naz seemed to have just recalled this matter and said in a sudden realization. If that's the case, it should be like this. You. Noah was speechless. This so-called challenge letter was found on the bar counter of the guild the night before when Noah was about to go home. Although there was no signature and no identification, Noah almost immediately understood who this challenge letter belonged to. Except for Naz, there was no other candidate. However, the person who helped Naz to send the challenge letter to the guild should be Hubby, right? Thinking of this, Noah glanced around, but he didn't find Hubby. Seeing Noah looking around, Naz surprisingly understood what Noah was looking for and said this directly. Don't look for Hubby, I asked him to go back to the guild first. Really? Noah was taken aback slightly. In other words, this time only the two of us will have a duel? Yes. Naz stretched out his left hand and held his right arm tightly. After all, in order to draw out the power in my body, I have already forced myself. Finally, I was very lucky to succeed in the situation of risking my life, but that's it. I don't have the confidence to control it at all. If hubby is here, I don't know if he will be hurt. Draw out the power in your body. Noah raised his eyebrows and looked at Naz's right arm. Only then did Noah notice. There was a bandage wrapped around Naz's right arm. That doesn't seem to be because of injury. With Noah's perception ability, he could vaguely feel it. Under the bandage, there was a rather scorching breath undulating. So, Noah's face slowly showed an expression of, as expected. Do you really have a hidden trump card? That's not my hidden trump card, but a gift from someone else. Naz's gaze had been fixed on Noah, but he began to untie the bandage wrapped around his right arm. Although I'm very unwilling, I know that it's impossible to win against you with my own strength, so I can only put my mind on this power. With such a sentence, Naz suddenly tore off the bandage on his right arm. This power belongs to the dragon. When these words came out of Naz's mouth, a terrifying heat surged from his body. Chi 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 chi. Around Naz, the air began to distort, and even smoke rose as if it was on fire, making a scorching sound. The entire space seemed to have been roasted into a fiery red color. Boom! With a burst of sound, Naz's right arm began to burn with flames. The flame actually increased the surrounding heat by another level, causing the ground under Naz's feet to be melted by the amazing heat and began to sink. Seeing this scene, Noah's eyes narrowed. Because under Noah's perception ability, at this time, Naz's magic power was showing a trend of crazy skyrocketing. It kept rising, and his aura also became more and more terrifying. That aura almost instantly skyrocketed to the level that surpassed Alusha and Kagura, and even surpassed Jura immediately. Moreover, it was still rising. In the blink of an eye, under Noah's perception ability, Naz's magic power suddenly rose to the level that was comparable to the most vicious and evil black mage in history, and even surpassed it in the past. What does this mean? It means that Naz's power, which was at the bottom of the 5-digit level at the beginning, instantly rose to the level of the gods in the box, which was the peak of the 5-digit level. No. It's not just the peak of the 5-digit level. The power of that aura is extremely close to the 4-digit level. It's only one step away from reaching the 4-digit level. Naz. Noah was really surprised. He. Naz grinned, and his eyes flashed. Take this. Noah. As soon as his voice fell. Boom. In the next moment, Naz tightened his body. Under the situation where the ground was crushed, he stirred up a hurricane impact. Like a bullet out of a barrel, he violently shot in front of Noah. Hiya. In the midst of the violent roar, Naz's entire body surged with surging flames. As Noah's pupils suddenly shrank, Naz charged in Noah's direction and fiercely blasted out a shocking punch. Boom! A burst of scorching flames exploded on top of the mountain, attacking in all directions. Chapter 1748. Boom! Extremely surging flames erupted from the top of a mountain outside Magnolia. Like the wrath of the god of fire, it instantly raised the temperature of the entire world a little, drying up the gale. Amidst the scalp-numbing burning sounds, the entire mountain peak was like a fragile cake. The top of the mountain was constantly melting under the burning flames. The rocks and rock plates were like cream, melting bit by bit into a grease-like substance. It was incomparably terrifying. As for the flowers and trees, they had long been burned into ashes and disappeared without a trace under the burning of the surging flames. That scene was like a natural disaster. On the top of the melting mountain, the earth was also burning, turning into a sea of fire with amazing heat. In the center of the sea of fire, Noah caught the fist of Nazi, whose whole body was burning in flames. Looking closely, on Noah's arm, there were magic lines flashing like electric wires. Impressively, it was the strengthening magic that could give Noah a physical ability comparable to the divine level. However, the sleeve on Noah's arm had long been burned to the point that not a single trace of ash could be seen. It's really amazing. Noah sensed the astonishing heat that was constantly being released from Naz's body. An inconceivable light appeared in his deep, dark eyes. Nazi, I didn't expect you to have this level of power. It's you who is amazing. You actually took this punch head on. As expected of Noah. Nazi was like a warrior, showing a vigorous smile. However, as I said before, this power doesn't belong to me. It's the power of the dragon. The power of the dragon. Noah's eyes flickered. Could it be, what? Have you guessed it? Nazi grinned. Yes, this is the power that Ignir left for me. The Fire Dragon King, Ignir. That was an absolute powerhouse in the Dragon Clan, someone who even dared to face Iconaroglia. The Dragon Clan's Fire Dragon Clan even worshipped him as their king. Unfortunately, such an existence's soul had long been sucked away by Akonrolia's dragon-slaying magic 400 years ago. Only his power remained in Naz's body to prolong his life. Half a month ago, Ignir and the rest of the dragons disappeared from Cloacas under the watchful eyes of Noah and the others. However, even though it had disappeared, Ignir seemed to have left all his remaining power in Naz's body. That's really a very amazing power, a power that I couldn't imagine before no matter what. Naz said as he tightened his fist that was caught by Noah. Originally, with my current strength, there was no way to unseal this power. Even if I spent a year or so, I might not be able to unseal it and use it. However, a few days ago, I accidentally unsealed this power. Although it's very difficult to control, it shouldn't be a problem to use it. Naz smiled. Perhaps, even Ignir wants to fight you. That's why he asked me to release this power, right? Relying on this power, Naz's magic power skyrocketed crazily, rising to the peak of 5 digits. He was only one step away from entering the 4-digit level. Thanks to this power, Naz finally had the strength to compete with Noah. Now, I'm not the only one fighting with you. There's also my father, the Fire Dragon King Ignir. Naz shouted. Noah. Can you defeat me and Ignir? As soon as his voice fell, an amazing flame burned wildly on Naz's right fist, releasing a terrifying heat. In that scorching flame, Noah could vaguely see. On Naz's right arm, a dragon tattoo was branded there. That was the power that Ignir left for Naz. Relying on this power, Naz roared violently. With a shake of his arm, he brought out an extremely terrifying flame and blasted it in Noah's direction without any fancy moves. Wherever the fist passed, the air was burned and exploded, causing a series of sonic booms. The momentum was quite terrifying. Even Noah didn't dare to be careless in the face of this level of power. At that moment, Noah's hands and feet flashed with electric line-like magic lines. After that, Noah fiercely clenched his fist, bringing along a cold blade-like force, and as fast as lightning, he met Naz's fist head-on without showing any signs of weakness. Bang! The fist that carried a powerful gust of wind and the fist that carried a shocking amount of heat collided fiercely, causing a terrifying gust of wind ripple and surging waves of fire to surge out, instantly expanding to a distance of several dozen meters. Kacha kacha kacha. On the ground, cracks spread rapidly from the feet of Noah and Naz. The powerful force that swept out first shook the ground into layers of cracks. Even the gravel that burst out from the cracks was directly burned into nothingness by the surging flames. The scene was quite shocking. In such a collision, a figure retreated violently from the surging gale and wave of fire, as if he was blown away, looking a little embarrassed. That person was Noah. For the first time, Noah fell into a disadvantageous position and was suppressed by Naz. In the surging gale and wave of fire, Naz, whose whole body was burning with flames, rushed out with a terrifying momentum and heat to the front of Noah. Fire Dragon King's bursting fist. The fist burning with flames was like a meteorite, causing a sonic boom along the way. It blasted mercilessly toward Noah's face. Before the fist hit, the flames on it made the bangs on Noah's forehead seem to be burned, emitting a burnt smell. Facing Naz's attack, Noah was secretly speechless and tightened his feet. Mana veins that looked like electric wires flickered on it, increasing the power of Noah's feet. As he stomped on the ground, some of the gravel on the ground cracked, and his figure flashed away, dodging the terrifying punch. It's not over yet. After the punch missed, Naz not only did not stop, but both of his hands were burning with surging flames. Like a furious fire dragon, he repeatedly blasted out heavy meteorite-like fists in the direction of Noah. Suddenly, Naz's fists directly turned into fiery red fist shadows, constantly flying out and blasting toward Noah overwhelmingly. The momentum was really terrifying, causing Noah's face to become solemn. However, this situation also made Noah's heart surge with blood, and the magic power in his body skyrocketed in an instant. Immediately, Noah raised his arms. Bang 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 bang. The storm-like punches suddenly fell fiercely on Noah's raised arms. As if causing a chain explosion, waves of fire burst out and covered Noah's body. Hiya! Naz was like an angry dragon. He repeatedly swung his fists that carried powerful flames in front of him, causing bursts of flames to explode one after another like bombs, stirring up waves of fire. It was like a whistling flood that covered the sky and earth. Under the powerful blow, the entire mountain top trembled slightly. At a certain moment, an explosion that was much louder than any previous explosion burst out, causing a figure to fly out of the fire wave. He took a few steps back before stabilizing his figure. As soon as his figure stabilized, a fierce light flashed in Noah's eyes. He raised a hand in the direction of Naz, who was still rushing toward him. A faint blue magic array flashed in front of Noah's palm. Inside, a vast magic power gathered and formed, turning into a huge beam of light that burst out from the magic array. Like a laser, it flashed in the space and shot straight at Naz. Facing the huge magic power beam, Naz just clenched his fist tightly. The flames on his body rose and surged to his fist. Under Naz's wave, he blasted out. With a muffled sound, Naz's fist fiercely hit the magic power beam that burst out. The astonishing power and heat directly shattered the magic light beam with a single punch. Noah suddenly stood up in shock. Chapter 1749. After obtaining Ignir's power, Naz's strength had really skyrocketed to a level that even Noah had to treat with caution. He was at the top of the 5-digit level, and even close to the 4-digit level. That level of power was enough to threaten Noah. After all, if he only used strengthening magic, although Noah could obtain a physical ability comparable to a 5-digit level, it was at best a physical ability. Under such circumstances, compared to Naz, who was infinitely close to the 4-digit level, Noah would undoubtedly be weaker. However, Noah did not expect that even the magic cannon would be shattered by Naz's punch, and it could not play any role at all. It was conceivable how powerful Naz was now. Although he kept saying that he could not completely control Ignir's power, Naz might not have realized that as the battle progressed, he was becoming more and more proficient in controlling his current power. If this continued, perhaps Naz would be able to completely control Ignir's power in the future. At that time, Naz was likely to directly break through to the 4-digit level. "You're really powerful, Naz." In Noah's surprise, Naz, who had shattered the magic light beam with one punch, rushed toward Noah with an indomitable momentum. The flames on his fist surged wildly, making Noah feel a sense of alarm. Hiya hiya. In the midst of the violent roar, Naz's figure was like an exploding rocket, and he rushed above Noah's head. His fist, which was surging with surging flames, seemed to be roaring, and turned into an overwhelming punch, waving at Noah's body like a storm. All the space in his field of vision was occupied by the overwhelming flaming fist shadows. The dark and deep eyes were rendered as sparkling as gemstones by the color of the flames. Looking at the curtain of fists that shrouded him like a storm with a faint dragon-like roar, Noah took a deep breath, and the magic power in his body surged out like a surging river. Clang! On Noah's pair of arms, the electric line-like magic lines flashed with an unprecedentedly bright light. Noah directly raised his arms and faced the overwhelming flaming fist shadows. He also waved his fists rapidly, not to be outdone. Bang 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 bang. Amidst the muffled sounds, the fists carrying flames and the fists carrying strong winds constantly collided with each other, causing circles of shock waves to shake the air. Every time they collided, cracks that were nearly half a meter deep would appear where Noah's feet were on the ground, causing the ground to sink layer by layer. After obtaining Ignir's power, Nez used the Dragon Slayer magic like a real dragon. Every punch made Noah feel a sense of heaviness. However, despite the heaviness, Naz's punches were not to the point where even Noah couldn't take them. Coupled with his superb perception ability, Naz's seemingly stormy punches, in fact, the trajectory of each punch was clearly fed back to Noah's mind. As a result, Noah just kept punching like Naz, relying on his god-level physical ability to take on each punch. Sure enough, it still doesn't work. Naz was not surprised by Noah's impregnable defense. Although he had obtained Ignir's power, no matter how powerful Ignir's power was, it was still weaker than Akanalia's. As for Noah, he was someone who could even defeat Akanarolia. Therefore, from the beginning, Naz knew that obtaining Ignir's power only gave him the qualifications to challenge Noah. It was not a trump card that allowed him to defeat Noah. So, how could he defeat Noah? Naz didn't consider this at all. Because, I'm already burning. With a low shout, Naz suddenly withdrew his fist, and the overwhelming flaming fist shadows that shrouded Noah condensed together at lightning speed, converging on Naz's raised fist. Take this. The flaming fist that gathered all of Naz's power burst out, stirring up a circle of flame ripples. It was like a meteor that was spraying flames. With a thunderous momentum, it heavily hit Noah's chest. Come on. A burning desire to fight finally surged in Noah's eyes. Vast demonic power surged from within his body. His fist was also lifted, and suddenly met the fire fist that was explosively coming towards him. Boom! A heavy muffled sound that made people's eardrums hurt resounded. A terrifying shockwave mixed with boiling hot waves of fire, like an exploding hurricane, suddenly shook in all directions. The terrifying impact constantly acted on the ground, causing the mountain to tremble. The ground seemed to be collapsing as it continued to sink. For a moment, the rocks cracked, the gravel splashed, the waves of fire surged, and the wind blew wildly. The entire peak of the mountain was like an erupting volcano. The fiery red pillar of chi soared into the sky, directly piercing the clouds in the sky and dispersing them. It wasn't until a long time later that the flame pillar that soared into the sky subsided little by little, slowly shrinking back to the top of the mountain. And the huge rocks that burst out from the top of the mountain rolled down the steep slope of the mountain with great momentum in the direction of the foot of the mountain. As for the top of the mountain, most of it had already melted, becoming like a candle with only half of it left. It looked very frightening. The billowing waves of fire were still surging there, rendering the entire mountain into a flaming mountain, which was extremely shocking to the eyes. Huff, huff, ha, ha, in the center of the sea of fire, Noah and Naz were facing each other at a distance. One was calming his breathing, while the other was gasping for air. Upon closer inspection, whether it was Noah or Naz, one of their arms seemed to have been scratched with several wounds, and blood was flowing out. Bursts of stinging pain hit Noah and Naz's minds. However, the two of them seemed to feel nothing. They looked at each other, and a smile suddenly appeared on their faces. You're really strong, Noah. Naz smiled very excitedly. Even with the power that Ignir left for me, there's no way I can win against you at once. You're really powerful. Same here, Naz. Noah shook off the blood on his arm and looked at Naz very seriously. Although you're using Ignir's power, you're able to fully utilize such a powerful power without suffering any of the side effects. This proves that you yourself also have the potential to reach this realm. Naz, you're really amazing. At this point, Noah's eyes flashed. So, next, I'm going to use all my strength. As soon as he finished speaking, a small silver sword fell into Noah's hand in a flash. Seeing this, Naz's pupils suddenly shrank. Cold Steel Queen, the holy sword that slays demons and demons, turn into a sword of steel and bestow me with divine power dash. In the incantation written in Elvish, a brilliant white light bloomed from Noah's hand. The Elvish device, which had the shape of a silver holy sword, suddenly appeared in Noah's hand in a burst of dazzling light particles. Noah held it tightly. It's time to decide the winner. Naz. Noah raised the holy sword in his hand and pointed at Naz from afar. Next attack. I'll knock you down. Hearing this, Naz clenched his fist, and the corners of his mouth curled up little by little. Immediately, an unprecedentedly hot flame burst out from Naz's body. Just what I want. The flame that released heat that could melt the earth was like a whirlpool that spun on Naz's fist. The magic power that was as ferocious as a Tyrannosaurus Rex burst out from Naz's body like a flood. In the blink of an eye, it condensed into a huge fire dragon. The huge fire dragon roared behind Naz, stirring up rolling sound waves that turned into an impact wind. It expanded continuously and annihilated the surrounding burning sea of fire. One side was holding the holy sword that shone with a brilliant white light. The other side was holding the swirling flame like a whirlpool. In the next second, Noah and Naz burst out at the same time, turning into a white comet and a red meteor. Absolute sword skill. Form 4 Flame Slash. Dragon Slayer Mystery. Fire type Red Lotus Phoenix Sword. After a while, the white comet and the red meteor quietly collided. Chapter 1750. In Magnolia, the people were still going on as usual, displaying the liveliness of a city. On the busy streets, people were chatting with each other amidst the commotion. It felt like a market. At a certain moment, a strange phenomenon occurred. Rumble, the ground suddenly trembled for no reason, causing the residents of Magnolia to panic on the streets. What's going on? What's going on? Is it an earthquake? People were panicking on the streets, but they didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to do. However, the earthquake left as quickly as it came. After a minute, the trembling ground began to calm down slowly, and the residents of Magnolia heaved a sigh of relief. Thank goodness it was just an ordinary earthquake. Yeah. I thought the dragons were coming to attack Magnolia after attacking Coloca's. Aren't you overthinking it? How can there be so many giant dragons attacking everywhere? Besides, even if there are, the hero who is ranked first among the 10 great Saint Magi is in Magnolia. If the giant dragons dare to attack, they will be wiped out in a matter of minutes. That's right. But I heard that the hero has left Magnolia temporarily to carry out a mission. Really? In an instant, the entire street once again returned to its bustling state like a market. To the residents of Magnolia, this slight earthquake was just an episode that they would forget in the blink of an eye. What they did not know was that the person who caused this phenomenon was the so-called hero who saved the country. Paw. 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 Along with a series of crisp sounds, the gravel rolled on the ground, causing the crisp sounds to echo in the air. Even the sound of rolling stones could be clearly heard. One could imagine how quiet the surroundings were. However, just a minute ago, there was an earth-shattering commotion here. As for why, one only needed to look at the scene to understand clearly. Crack, amidst the faint cracking sounds, cracks began to spread on the ground without leaving a trace. Crack, a huge rock suddenly turned into a pile of powder without any warning and scattered all over the ground. Similar phenomena occurred frequently in this part of the world. Originally, there should have been a tall mountain here. Unfortunately, the mountain had completely vanished now, and only piles of crushed rocks and debris covered the entire ground, causing it to seem to be in an extremely sorry state. From the rubble, one could vaguely see some traces of the mountain that was originally here. In other words, the mountain that had completely disappeared had now shockingly turned into a pile of rubble. Taking a closer look, there was actually a huge crater in the middle of the rubble and debris. The crater was more than a few hundred meters in diameter, and it looked as if the ground had been pierced through. It was quite shocking. That was not the worst of it. The truly hair-raising phenomenon was in the huge crater. There was nothing inside. Some of them looked as if they had been roasted by the flames of hell, turning the land charred black. However, in such a charred ground, 2 breaths were rising and falling. Phew! Holding the silver holy sword that was shining with a brilliant white light, Noah let out a heavy sigh of relief and lowered his head to look in front of him. Ha, 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 Naz was lying on the charred ground. His entire body was covered in sweat as if he was exhausted. He couldn't help but gasp for breath. Chi! In the midst of the burning sound, a dragon tattoo on Naz's right arm that was emitting an astonishing heat was disappearing bit by bit. With the disappearance of the dragon tattoo, the aura on Naz's body also gradually faded. In the end, it fell to its usual level. Clearly feeling this change, Noah laughed bitterly. As expected, the power that Ignir left for you is only temporary. Moreover, after using it once, it will disappear and never come back. The bitter smile on Naz's face became even more intense. In the end, I still can't defeat you. With that said, Naz's face was filled with an extremely strong sense of unwillingness. Of course, he was unwilling. Since he was young, the person that Naz wanted to defeat the most was Noah. However, as he grew older, Noah grew at an astonishing speed, making Naz feel that he could not catch up. This time, with the help of the power left by Ignir, he could finally compete with Noah. In the end, he still could not win even after trying his best. How could the competitive Naz be willing to accept this? However, while he was unwilling, Naz also felt a kind of joy from the bottom of his heart. That was the satisfaction that could only be felt after fighting with all his strength. Perhaps, everyone thought that Naz was just a person who did not admit defeat. In fact, Naz was very unwilling to admit defeat and even very competitive. However, what Naz wanted to enjoy the most was not the result, but the process of the duel. In such a mood, Naz cast his gaze on Noah. While panting violently, a big smile appeared on his face as if it came from the bottom of his heart. Let's have a showdown next time. Hearing this, Noah was startled at first, and then he smiled as well. Yeah. Noah extended his hand to Naz, who was lying on the ground. Let's have a showdown next time. Naz grinned and raised his hand with difficulty. Slowly but firmly, he held Noah's outstretched hand and held it tightly with Noah's hand. A ray of sunlight shone down from the clouds in the sky and hit Noah and Naz's tightly held hands. Although it was only 2 very small human hands that were equivalent to the entire world, at this moment, the world seemed to revolve around these 2 protagonists, causing the sky to be illuminated by the sunlight. This scene happened to fall into the eyes of a person. In the eyes of a petite girl who looked like a fairy. The child of the world and the child of the dragon. Mavis smiled. What an incredible 2 children. The place called Between the Worlds was still as pure white as ever, without a single trace of filth. Pieces of pure white feathers fluttered around. Waves of soft white light emitted from those feathers, illuminating the world. That scene was like a dream. It was so beautiful. However, above this pure white world, in the sky, there was a crystal-clear barrier covering the entire sky. Outside the barrier, the grim reapers in red robes were like phantoms that constantly wandered around. They were densely packed and filled the entire sky, making people feel very uncomfortable. Noah, who returned here, raised his head almost immediately and looked at the sky. After confirming that there was no problem with the barrier, he breathed a sigh of relief. Then, Noah turned his head and looked in another direction. There, an outline connected to 10 patterns, with a sun imprinted in the center. There were 24 engraved stone plates suspended in the air. Around the stone plate, strange and incomprehensible characters revolved around it, slowly rotating. On both sides of the stone plate, Gaia and Alea closed their eyes, their palms facing forward. A piece of sparkling crystal was there, slowly rotating and releasing waves of white mist. Under Gaia and Alea's control, the mist was injected into the stone plate bit by bit. Noah could feel it. As this scene progressed, the stone plate began to undergo a qualitative change. However, this change was not complete, and it needed time to slowly settle. Seeing this, Noah understood. Gaia and Alea's work was not complete. Just right, I will have more time to do what I want to do. After saying this, Noah turned around and slightly raised his hand. a feather suddenly floated in front of Noah. Noah stretched out his finger and lightly touched the feather. In the next second, Noah disappeared from where he was, allowing the source of this pure white world to return to its original tranquility. Chapter 1751. Alicia Elven Academy. Alicia Elven Academy was a noble academy that trained witches from all over the Alicia Empire to become first-rate elves. The academy had an elven forest and an academy city. It occupied a vast area, and teachers who were as powerful as the elven knights of the imperial capital stayed here. It was not inferior to a small country, so this academy was like a small independent country with a strong sense of autonomy. Recently, the atmosphere in Alicia Elf Academy had gradually become tense to the point that even outsiders could feel it. The reason was very simple. It was because the Elven Sword Dance Festival was about to begin. It was a sacrifice to the Elven King, who was equivalent to the world itself. At the same time, it was the largest ceremony to determine the strongest Elven envoy, the Elven Sword Dance Festival. The winner could not only make a wish to the Elven King, but also obtain unimaginable fame and become an elven envoy respected by all the major countries. They were like idols in the world of elven envoys. Of course, those who could participate in the Elven Sword Dance Festival were the true elites carefully selected from all the major countries. Therefore, Alicia Elven Academy, as an academy that specialized in nurturing outstanding elven envoys, was able to recommend 3 teams to participate in the festival. From this, one could see the status of Alicia Elven Academy in the Alicia Empire. Not to mention, the dean of the academy was also known as the strongest elven envoy on the continent. She was known as the Dusk Witch by the people. In order to compete for the right to participate in the Elven Sword Dance Festival, the atmosphere in Alicia Elven Academy had been very tense recently. Because this year's Elven Sword Dance Festival was a team competition, it required the participants to form a team of 5. During this period of time, not only were the students in the academy caught up in the competition for talents, but they also frequently participated in team battles for the sake of ranking, trying to squeeze into the top 3 and obtain the right to participate in the competition. Under such circumstances, even the top 3 teams had been working very hard in the past month in order to prevent their rankings from being snatched away. They had been quite busy. The only exception was the team in the first place. Fairy Tale. A month ago, this team had already obtained enough points to leave the second-place team in the dust. They were almost firmly in the first place. Therefore, a month ago, Fairy Tale announced that they were giving up on all of their upcoming ranking matches. Each of their members took a month off to visit their families and report the good news. In fact, after an entire month of chasing, the second-place team still hadn't caught up to Fairy Tale's score and was unable to squeeze into first place. Seeing that the Elven Sword Dance Festival was about to begin, everyone knew that this eye-catching party would definitely be able to enter the Elven Sword Dance Festival. The second and third ranked teams were naturally very unwilling to accept this fact, but there was nothing they could do. Under such an atmosphere, Noah returned to the academy. "You're finally back." In the dean's office, Grey Vaz placed the documents in her hands on the table, crossed her arms, and raised her head slightly with a pair of small glasses. She looked forward and said sarcastically, "If you didn't come back, I would have suspected that you were afraid of fighting with Lotus, so you ran away. We haven't seen each other for a month. You just came back, and you're using this kind of tone to mock your own student?" Noah said with narrowed eyes. "You actually still have the energy to mock me. Looks like I don't have to worry about whether you need to lie in the ward again." A month ago, Grey Vaz was still lying in the hospital bed recuperating. The reason was that she wanted to pass on the secret of the ultimate sword technique to Noah and force herself to fight. Originally, the power of an elven envoy would gradually decline after the age of 25 until they completely lost the power of an elven envoy. However, Grey Vaz had won in the Elven Sword Dance Festival and made a wish that she could obtain an eternally young body. That was why she still retained the power of an elven envoy after nearly 30 years. However, this ability had completely disappeared a month ago. In order to pass on the secret of the ultimate sword technique to Noah, Grey Vaz didn't care about the side effects of the curse engraving in her heart and forced herself to fight. In the end, after she fell, she completely lost her power as an elven envoy. Because of this, the moment Noah returned to this world and returned to the academy, the first thing he did was to visit Greyvath. After all, the strongest elven envoy on the continent had disappeared because of him. Noah should show some concern no matter what. Who would have thought that this witch's personality was still so bad? She offended Noah right away, making Noah speechless. And this result was obviously what Grey Vaz wanted to see. There's no need for unnecessary concern. Just like what you see now, I'm very well. There's no problem at all. Grey Vaz said slowly. Kid, you just like to worry. Undoubtedly, you're a big man, but you're acting coy like a little woman. You won't be able to win the favor of girls like this. Noah really wanted to tell Grey Vaz that he had just gotten married to two delicate beauties. In addition, there were many people he wanted to marry. He was sure that he would be much happier than a certain witch who was already 40 years old and still hadn't found anyone to marry. However, of course, once this sentence came out of Noah's mouth, Grey Vaz would definitely kill him. Of course, it wasn't a real kill, but a social kill. Forget it. I've indeed seen that you're more energetic than anyone else. I'm just here to report to you, lest the Great Witch really thinks that I've escaped. Noah pursed his lips and asked. Oh, right. Are the others back? Your harem members? Grey Vaz replied half-heartedly. No, none of them are back yet. But they should be back soon. So, if you want to harm someone, you'd better take advantage of this period of time to get it done. But remember, don't get anyone pregnant. Otherwise, I won't be able to explain it to the nobles. Although Noah really wanted to refute Grey Vaz's words, he knew that it would only give Grey Vaz more opportunities to tease him. Thus, he suppressed his urge and sighed. Since that's the case, I'll head back first. Go ahead. Grey Vaz picked up the document on the table again and browsed through it while speaking without raising her head. Remember not to wander around and cause unnecessary trouble for me. Noah ignored Grey Vaz's obvious teasing. He waved his hand, turned around, and walked towards the door. After Noah left, Grey Vaz raised her head from the document in her hand and looked towards the door. She sighed faintly. You're not going to ask anything? Grey Vaz thought that Noah would definitely ask her why she insisted on letting him participate in the Elven Sword Dance Festival. She didn't expect that Noah didn't ask anything. Should I say that you're considerate? Or that you're too indifferent? Grey Vaz laughed self-deprecatingly. But you're my hope now. I can only rely on you, kid. On the other hand, Noah, who had just left the dean's office, walked along the corridor of the academy and attracted a lot of attention. Quick! Look! That male elf is back. It's true. It wasn't easy for me to not have to worry about being tainted. What should I do now? Yeah, but don't you think that he's actually very handsome? Well, a little bit. If I'm tainted by him, I think it's not bad. All of a sudden, all sorts of unscrupulous conversations could be heard from the surroundings. Noah had a feeling that he hadn't felt in a long time. These young ladies are still so pure. Noah, who felt that he hadn't felt this way for a long time, must be sick in the head. But, it's still better than being treated as a pure pervert. Noah walked out of the school building with such a strange feeling. He entered the courtyard and returned to his room in the dormitory of the Crow class. However, a series of noises could be heard from the room and attracted Noah's attention. Chapter 1752. A melodious hum faintly sounded from the door and entered Noah's ears. Noah raised his eyebrows and began to mutter in his heart. Isn't she already back? Only a pure witch G could become an elf envoy. Thus, in this elven academy, Noah was the only male. However, in the dormitory of the elven academy, two people shared a room. Thus, of course, Noah also had his own roommate. Since there was movement in Noah's room, there was no doubt that this roommate had returned. At that moment, Noah's eyes turned slightly, and he quietly opened the door and slipped in. Ha 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 ha. As soon as he entered the room, the hum became clear and gave a warm feeling. Listening carefully, the melodious hum sounded from the kitchen. Noah quietly slipped to the kitchen door and looked inside. In the kitchen, a young girl wearing an Alicia Elven Academy uniform and an apron was humming a song while cutting ingredients skillfully. Her light golden hair swayed gently, and she seemed to be in a good mood. At first glance, Linley, who was busy in the kitchen, simply looked like the most virtuous housewife. She was full of wife strength and made people have a good impression of her. Who would have thought that this young lady who was busy in the kitchen like a housewife was actually a noble? Furthermore, there was a maid who was supposed to stay in the kitchen and be busy with household chores by her side. However, Linley didn't think that these household chores were the work of a servant. Not only did she do it herself, she even took over all the work of her maid. When he thought of the subtle relationship between Linley and Carol, Noah had a feeling of wanting to complain but didn't know where to start. After looking around the room, Noah realized that there was something wrong with the room. The maid, who was supposed to be cooking in the kitchen, was lying on the sofa at this moment. She was sleeping soundly. She turned over and mumbled as if she was in a dream. "Miss, I'm really hungry. Is the meal not ready yet?" Noah wanted to say it again, but he didn't know where to vent his disgust. Sure enough, this world was full of all kinds of inconceivable phenomena. After leaving this thought, Noah turned his gaze to Linley, who was humming in a good mood and cooking in the kitchen with skillful methods. A mischievous impulse welled up in his heart. Thus, Noah deliberately approached Lynn Silei with footsteps that would not make any sound. When he arrived behind Lynn Silei, he blew a breath of air into Lynn Silei's delicate little ear. Ah! Lynn Silei's shoulders trembled violently, and her ears turned red. She was startled. Noah quickly dodged to the side. Almost at the same time, Linley turned around abruptly and looked behind her. In the end, she didn't see anything. Huh? Lynn Silei was slightly startled. Her clear and sparkling eyes that were like gemstones were filled with deep confusion. No one? Noah, who was hiding behind Linley, calculated the timing and dodged to the side again. At this moment, Linley turned around again with a trace of doubt. Facing the kitchen, she muttered. "Is it the wind? But the wind seems to be hot." Saying this, Linley gently touched her burning ears, her pretty face slightly red as she snorted. What an annoying wind. Hearing this muttering, Noah couldn't help but laugh. Why didn't he realize before that this prideful missy was actually so cute? However, the more he thought about it, the stronger Noah's mischievous mood in his heart became. Thus, Noah once again moved his head closer and blew a breath into Linley's other ear. Ah! Linley let out a cute cry. Her other ear quickly turned red, and her slender shoulders trembled even more intensely than before. Noah immediately dodged to the side again. Noah's timing was very good. Therefore, just as she turned her body, Lynn Silei immediately turned around and looked behind her. Who is it? Lynn Silei's pretty face flushed red as she looked around and shouted in a panic. Carol? Is it you? Noah, who was still hiding behind Lynn Silei, snickered as he watched Lynn Silei fall into a state of panic. He couldn't help but move his head closer to Lynn Silei's ear, preparing to blow another breath of air on that little ear that had turned red. Unfortunately, this time, an accident that even Noah didn't expect happened. Not knowing if it was because she finally noticed the abnormality behind her, or if it was unintentional, Linley suddenly turned her head. Moreover, she turned her head in the direction where Noah was moving closer to Linley's ear. As a result, one moved his head forward, while the other turned his head back, causing their faces to meet in an instant. The next moment, chirp, accompanied by an extremely soft sound, Noah and Linley opened their eyes wide at the same time. Noah looked at Linley's delicate face that was close at hand, and felt the faint softness from her lips. He was really stunned on the spot. Oh! Linley subconsciously called out, but because her lips were firmly blocked, she could only make a vague moan. Although it was purely an accident, it couldn't erase a fact. That was, at this moment, Noah and Linley were indeed kissing by coincidence. In a mouth-to-mouth manner. Time seemed to have paused at this moment, causing Noah and Linley to both open their eyes wide, looking at each other's face that was close at hand, and began to tremble inside. Not knowing how long this scene lasted, Noah and Linley finally reacted at the same time. As if shocked, Noah and Linley suddenly separated and stepped back at the same time. You. Linley covered her mouth with one hand, while the other hand pointed at Noah, trembling uncontrollably. Her pretty face quickly turned red at a speed visible to the naked eye, and tears began to appear in her eyes. You. I. Noah stuttered, which was rare, and finally, said such a sentence. I didn't do it on purpose. However, this statement, in the current situation, couldn't be considered an explanation at all. For Noah, he just had the idea of playing a prank by chance, and it was considered a whim. Normally, he wouldn't do this at all. To Lincilii, this rich young lady had her first kiss taken away for no apparent reason. All of a sudden, an unprecedented sense of shame surged in Linley's heart, causing her pretty face to turn red, and tears to appear in the corners of her eyes. However, her body was suffused with a phosphorescent divine power. Seeing this, Noah shouted in his heart, "Oh no!" Then, Linley exploded. A gust of cold wind mixed with ice particles suddenly blew from the entire kitchen, rolling to the surroundings. The utensils, ingredients, and cooking utensils in the kitchen were all swept into the cold wind. First, they were frozen into ice, and then like blunt weapons, they flew in all directions under the raging cold wind. Noah hurriedly dodged the incoming blunt weapons, and shouted at Linley. "Wait! Calm down." Unfortunately, Linley was covering her mouth with a red face, squatting on the ground with tears in the corners of her eyes. She didn't hear Noah's voice at all. Of course, the chaotic Linley didn't hear anything, but that didn't mean that others didn't hear anything either. Such a big commotion in the kitchen was enough to wake Carol up. Miss? Carol ran into the kitchen in a panic. What happened? Before she could finish her sentence, a frozen pot was blown by the cold wind, and heavily smashed towards Carol. Clang! Amidst the sound of metal clashing, Carol received a heavy blow to her head. Ugh! Carol only felt stars in front of her eyes, and then she fell down. It was only then that Linley reacted and cried out in alarm. Carol! Seeing this chaotic situation, Noah secretly swore in his heart. In the future, he would definitely not play pranks on a whim. Chapter 1753. Ugh! In the room, Carol was lying on the sofa, looking dizzy, as if she had not yet woken up from her dizziness. Carol. Linley crouched in front of the sofa, looking at Carol with a worried expression, and then glared at Noah. It's all your fault. Noah was really wronged. Perhaps, the incident of him accidentally stealing Linley's first kiss could be said to be Noah's fault, but for Carol to become like this, it was entirely because Linley fell into a state of confusion and carelessly used her divine power, right? However, thinking about it carefully, the reason Linley fell into a state of confusion was also because Noah stole this rich young Miss' first kiss. Therefore, if one were to think about it carefully, it was indeed Noah's fault. Okay, it's my fault. Noah could only raise his hands in surrender. Just tell me, how should I make it up to you? Make it up to you? Linley pursed her lips, and said shyly and angrily. That was my first kiss, the one and only most precious thing. You took my first kiss without permission, nothing can make it up to you. Noah was immediately speechless. From a sentimental point of view, Linley's words were indeed correct. However, why did it feel like the situation was suddenly very serious? Of course, the one who benefited was Noah. Noah did not lose anything, and even gained, so he had no right to speak. At that moment, Noah could only say so. Then what do you want? Linley glared at Noah, her face still slightly red, but suddenly thought of something, and clapped her hands fiercely. If that's the case, then go and steal Claire's first kiss. Huh? Noah's brain immediately crashed. Take away Claire's first kiss? What kind of situation was this? Are you sure you've calmed down? Noah could only force out such a sentence. What's the point of stealing Claire's first kiss? Because I'm the only one who lost my precious first kiss. Isn't that unfair? Lynn Siley said indignantly. That would be letting Claire off too easily. That's why you have to steal her first kiss. That way, Claire and I will be even. What kind of logic was this? No, at least no one knew what Linley was thinking. To put it simply, this rich young miss who viewed Claire as her sworn enemy must have thought that she had lost her first kiss while Claire still had her precious first kiss. That was why she suddenly said this, right? But isn't there something wrong with the comparison? I don't know what the point of doing this is. Noah rubbed his forehead and said directly. So, please allow me to refuse. You actually dare to refuse the order of the daughter of the Lauren Frost family? Linley's gaze towards Noah became more and more unfriendly. How dare you, and how irresponsible you are. Oh. Noah raised his eyebrows and said with a smile that wasn't a smile. In other words, you want me to take responsibility? Who? Who wants you to take responsibility? Linley's pretty face turned red, and she shouted in embarrassment and anger. You want to marry into my Lauren Frost family? You're still too early. Marry into your family? Noah said in shock. It's just a kiss, and you're talking about marriage? Lin Si Lei was infuriated by his words. What do you mean it's just a kiss? Don't you know how important a kiss is to an elf envoy? Noah only remembered after being reminded by Linley. For which G and high-ranking elves, a kiss represented the most sacred ceremony. For example, when Noah and Aster made a vow to be together forever, the way they did it was by kissing. Many retired elf envoys would even use their last bit of strength to make a kiss vow when they entered into marriage with their other half. The vow and ceremony made after a kiss was witnessed by the elf king and absolutely could not be violated. Once violated, no matter how powerful the elf envoy was, they would not be able to contract with elves anymore. In serious cases, even their divine power would gradually dissipate, and they would become an ordinary person. Therefore, for Linley, this kiss with Noah might really be very important. It was important enough to be involved in marriage. When Linley said that nothing can make up for it, it was not for emotional purposes. Even if it was for a rational reason, it was the most practical. Noah realized how serious a mistake he had made, and his expression became somewhat helpless. Okay, I take back what I just said, but what's done is done. Do you want me to give you another kiss? Wah! Linley said in embarrassment and anger. You really are unforgivable. Seeing that Linley was about to explode again, Noah was shocked. Just when Noah was thinking whether he should ignore everything and leave first, on the sofa, Carol suddenly let out a soft moan. Carol? Linley was slightly delighted, and hurriedly squatted in front of the sofa and said softly. Carol, are you awake? Seeing that Linley's attention was distracted by Carol, Noah breathed a sigh of relief. Young miss. Carol seemed to still be in a daze. She clutched her head as she spoke. Why do I feel a little headache? Is it just a little painful? Linley asked considerately. Other than the headache, do you feel anything else? Other feelings? Carol still had a confused look on her face. Then, she opened her mouth and asked. I'm also a little hungry. I know, I'll prepare something for you to eat first. Linley nodded repeatedly. You should rest first. Okay. Carol responded, then closed her eyes and fell asleep. Noah, who silently watched this scene from the side, could not help but sigh. You're quite good to Carol. More than just good. Clearly, Carol had the title of a maid and didn't know how to do any household chores, but Linley helped Carol solve all of her household chores. She even took care of this somewhat useless maid like a nanny. Generally speaking, this had long surpassed the category of good. However, Linley said with some pride, as if it was a matter of course, "The daughter of the Lawrence Frost family will not treat her servants badly. As a noble, helping the people around her is a matter of course. Although it was such a matter, that was your maid, helping her wash clothes and cook was a matter of course." Noah resisted the urge to complain and spread his hands. "Nobles are really amazing, I can only express admiration. It's good that you know." Linley nodded proudly, turned around, and just as she was about to enter the kitchen, she paused. Immediately, Linley turned her head with a slightly red face, and glared at Noah. "Remember what happened today, and in the future, don't blow into my ear." Leaving this sentence, Linley went straight into the kitchen, her pair of ears turning red. Seeing this, Noah scratched his cheek and muttered in his heart as if he had understood something. Could it be that the ear is Linley's sensitive point? Why did he suddenly feel like he had discovered something big enough to be silenced? That must be an illusion, right? Must be. It didn't take long for Linley to finish preparing the meal. However, Carol was already asleep and did not get up. Lynn Siley didn't disturb Carol's rest. She put down the food she had prepared and planned to heat it up for Carol when she woke up before giving it to her. Linley also prepared a portion for Noah. This surprised Noah. Noah thought that Linley already held a grudge against him. Now it seemed that this girl was indeed a good person. Of course, on the surface, Linley said so. It's just convenient. I didn't make it especially for you." This sentence, no matter how he heard it, sounded arrogant. Noah did not untactfully expose her, it was already good enough to have something to eat. The meal Linley prepared was an ordinary stew. Moreover, it tasted better than many of the chefs in high-class restaurants. Noah could not help but eat 2 more mouthfuls, and did not stop until his stomach was full. Looking at Noah eating so enthusiastically, Linley seemed to be a little happy. Suddenly, Linley asked, "Do you have any wishes that you want to fulfill at the Elven Sword Dance Festival?" Chapter 1754. Do you have any wish that you wish to fulfill at the Elven Sword Dance Festival? The sudden question made Noah, who was enjoying his meal, pause in his actions. He raised his head and looked at Linsley in confusion. "Why are you suddenly asking such a question?" "Because I find it unbelievable," Linsley said straightforwardly. "Undoubtedly, you are the only male elven envoy, and you have the same sword dance as Renasubble. Your strength is outstanding, and your contracted elven envoy is also a humanoid elf of the highest level. You are blessed in all aspects, but I have never heard of an existence like you on the continent. Logically speaking, with your uniqueness, you shouldn't have been able to hide until now." In fact, this was one of the reasons why Gray and Vaz were surprised by the appearance of a male elven envoy like Noah. As the only male elven envoy other than Solomon, Noah had too many reasons to be the focus of the entire Ordesia Empire, and even the entire continent. However, he was only discovered at this age. This was truly unbelievable. If it is because you have the same nature as the Demon King and have been hiding your identity to avoid suspicion, then it is understandable. But if that is the case, why would you suddenly appear in this academy and not hesitate to reveal your identity? Linsley said confidently. Thinking about it this way, I can only think of a reason why you did not hesitate to reveal your identity to participate in the Elven Sword Dance Festival. Since you did not hesitate to reveal your identity to participate in the Elven Sword Dance Festival, you must have a wish that must be fulfilled, right? Under normal circumstances, Lynn Siley's statement could not be said to be wrong. It was a pity that Linley didn't know that Noah hadn't been hiding his identity all this while. The reason why he didn't reveal his sensitive identity as a male elf to the world was entirely because he hadn't lived in this world before. Not to mention, before coming to this world, Noah was not even an elven envoy. It was only after he came to this world and met Gray and Vaz that he absorbed a bit of Gray's divine power that he obtained the qualifications to become an elven envoy. Only Noah knew about this. Even Gray and Vass, who had led him to the door of the elf messenger, didn't know about this. Therefore, Lindsay Lay naturally could not guess this reason. Actually, I really don't have any special wishes that I want to fulfill. Noah hesitated for a moment, and finally revealed the inside story. I participated in the Elven Sword Dance Festival because of 2 reasons. 2 reasons? Lynn Silei asked curiously. What 2 reasons? One of the reasons is that I met Grey Vaz by chance. She provided me with some conveniences and taught me the skills of elves, so I agreed to participate in this Elven Sword Dance Festival, Noah said with a shrug. The other reason, I think you should know, is because of Liliana Subble. At the mention of this name, Lindsay Lay couldn't help but have some longing in her eyes. It had to be said that Lena Schubel had a lot of charm and fame for the modern elven envoys. At least, Noah had never seen any elven envoys who didn't express heartfelt admiration and respect for the strongest sword dancer. Of course, Lindsay Lay was the same. It was because of this that Lindsay Lay found it even more unbelievable. Why is a man like you so close to the idol of the shamans? Lindsay Lay said with some envy and jealousy. Undoubtedly, I'm just a pervert. Who's a pervert? Noah rolled his eyes. Does being related to Liliana Subble mean that I have bad intentions? Allah? Are you trying to say that you're not a pervert? Lindsay Lay glared at Noah, her pretty face blushing. You obviously stole my first kiss and breathed into my ear. You even did it twice. That's just an accident. Noah's mouth twitched, and he muttered in a low voice. Also, who knew that your ear is your sensitive point? Lindsay Lay looked over in confusion. What are you muttering over there about? Nothing. Noah sighed, and continued to eat while casually asking. Then, why are you participating in the Elven Sword Dance Festival? When these words came out of Noah's mouth, Lindsay Lay's expression froze, and she fell silent. Noah, who noticed the abnormality, glanced at Lindsay Lay, and changed the topic. Well, I'm just asking. If it's not convenient to say, then don't say it. Actually, it's not something that needs to be hidden. Lindsay Lay was silent for a while before sighing. I want to participate in the Elven Sword Dance Festival because I want to save my little sister. Little sister? Noah said in surprise. You have a little sister? To be exact, I have 2 little sisters. I'm the eldest daughter in the family, and the one I want to save is my second sister. Lindsay Lay's voice sounded a little sad. My second sister. Yusha is currently in a deep slumber, and she may never wake up. Noah frowned, put down the utensils in his hands, and looked at Lindsay Lay. Under Noah's gaze, Lindsay Lay smiled helplessly and explained. My younger sister, Yudia, was an excellent witch who was highly recommended by the Divine Rights Institute. But a few years ago, during a sacrificial ceremony for the Water Elf King, my younger sister made a mistake and angered the Elf King. She was imprisoned by the Elf King in a curse ice that would never melt. Hearing this, Noah's frown deepened. Was it the Elf King again? Claire's sister betrayed the Elf King, and caused the entire Ordesia Empire to suffer a devastating blow. Lindsay Lay's sister angered the Elf King, and her entire person was sealed in cursed ice that would never melt. In addition, the previous Elven War led to the reincarnation of the Dark Elf King, the birth of the Demon King, and the connection between Liliana Subble and Noah. Why was there the shadow of the Elf King everywhere? Moreover, it wasn't anything good. As the ruler of this world, what kind of existence was the Elf King? While Noah was deep in thought, Lindsay Lay continued to explain. In order to save Yudia from the cursed ice, my father once recruited many excellent elven ambassadors of the Empire and asked them to try to break the ice, but it ended in failure. Since then, Yudia has been in a deep sleep, and it has been a few years now. After all, the ice cast by the Elf King wasn't something that human ambassadors could do anything about. So that's why you want to participate in the Elven Sword Dance Festival? Noah suddenly understood. Use the wish of the Elven Sword Dance Festival to save the child called Udia. That's right. Lindsay Lay nodded vigorously. The winner of the Elven Sword Dance Festival can fulfill a wish. My wish is for the Water Elf King to grant forgiveness and release my sister Udia. I see. Noah sighed. Then you're really similar to Claire in all aspects. Claire participated in the Elven Sword Dance Festival for her sister and to find out the truth behind her sister's betrayal. Lindsay Lay participated in the Elven Sword Dance Festival for her sister and to release her from the eternal ice. The two were indeed very similar in all aspects. Thinking of this, Noah silently swallowed the last piece of meat. Then, he looked up and gazed at Lindsay Lay. To an elf ambassador, a kiss is the most sacred contract and ritual, right? Lindsay Lay was slightly taken aback. Under such circumstances, Noah suddenly smiled and said this. Since that's the case, Lindsay Lay, I promise you that I will obtain victory in the Elven Sword Dance Festival and help you save your sister. Saying this, Noah extended a finger and pressed it on Lindsay Lay's lips. I've already performed a sacred ceremony with you and established a contract. Therefore, I will definitely fulfill this promise. This will be my compensation to you, alright? Feeling the touch of Noah's finger on her lips and seeing Noah's deep, dark eyes and smiling expression, Lindsay Lay's heartbeat involuntarily sped up. Then, like a well-behaved wife, Linley nodded her head with a red face. Seeing Lindsay Lay like this, Noah couldn't help but smile. As expected, this girl was much cuter than he'd imagined. Chapter 1755. The next day, Noah woke up in the dazzling sunlight. Ugh, as soon as he woke up, Noah heard a pleasant voice, which instantly woke up his somewhat muddled brain. He lowered his head and looked at his arms. There was a naked elf girl with skin as white and smooth as pearls. She had a petite figure, but beautiful long silver hair that reached her waist. She was like a koala bear, tightly hugging Noah. Her face, which usually did not reveal much emotion, had a rare look of serenity. Looking at the incomparably cute elf girl in his arms, Noah bitterly smiled while gently stroking Aster's soft silver hair and muttered. This is a scene that I haven't seen in a long time. Ever since Noah returned to the world of fairy tale, Aster had never woken up in Noah's arms like this. The reason was very simple. After returning to the world of fairy tale, Noah rarely slept alone. There was always Mira and Lisanna by his bed. Ever since he got married to Mira and Lisanna, Noah had never stayed alone in the house. Under such circumstances, Aster no longer came out to sleep with him. Perhaps it was because Noah had not slept alone for a long time, and had returned to this world that originally belonged to Aster. That was why Aster came out to sleep with him as usual. That was why her expression was so peaceful. Although sleeping without clothes is still something that people can't agree with. His words brought forth another voice. That is only the proof of the Holy Sword Fairy's dependence on you. You should be proud, my fated one. There was only one person who would call Noah that. Therefore, Noah looked to the side without any surprise. He saw that at the window, Athena was pulling open the curtain with one hand. Her coquettish snake eyes were looking at the elf forest in the distance. She seemed to be talking to herself. So this is the world where the elves live? What? Noah asked without leaving a trace. You don't like this world? Or rather, it's the opposite. Athena shook her head, her eyes fixed on the elven forest outside. After coming to this world, I feel like I've returned to my mother's body. Perhaps it's because I was reincarnated with reference to the existence of the Holy Sword spirits, so I can't help but feel a sense of belonging to this world. Isn't that a good thing? Noah smiled. You once ran against the world as the god of perverse Tao. Now that you feel a sense of belonging in this world, it proves that you have been accepted by the world once more. Theoretically speaking, the gods that were born from the stars should be an existence that is one with the world. As a god, even if they were to turn into a body that goes against the world, it would still be a joke that no one would dare to agree with. Athena said calmly, but then changed the topic. If it was in the past, I would definitely think that way. But after knowing about your existence, I finally understood the truth of the world and how narrow-minded I was in the past. I'm not that arrogant to talk about the truth of the world with you, the beloved child that was born from millions of worlds. Even your existence was formed from the fragments of the original world. Athena glanced at Noah. So, I'll admit to what you said. Noah couldn't help but laugh. Then, he gently hugged the naked elf girl in his arms, got up slightly, and looked at Athena. In that case, would you like to meet my companions? In other worlds, Aster and Athena didn't like to interact with others under normal circumstances. Even if it was Mila and Lisanna, it was the same. Apart from Noah, the others weren't elven users and didn't know how to interact with elves. The only one who could communicate with elves was the pure Magus G. Noah was the only male elven user, so he was an exception. Under such circumstances, Aster and Athena were able to interact with others to a certain extent because of Noah. They also had a strong sense of self. For elves who didn't have a strong sense of self and only had the intelligence of wild beasts, it was impossible for them to interact with beings that weren't Magus G, let alone low-ranked elves who didn't even have any intelligence. However, it was different in this world. Alicia Elven Academy didn't have much, but the number of elven users and elves was definitely not small. Therefore, interacting with elven users shouldn't be an unpleasant thing for Athena, who was an elf. Unfortunately, Athena still refused. Although I'm interested in the elven users of this world, I'd rather observe them one-sidedly than interact with them. Athena's beautiful snake eyes were filled with arrogance that hadn't been seen in a long time. Even if I'm no longer a goddess, I'm still in existence of the highest level among elves. I'm not inferior to the holy sword elves over there. That's why I don't want any random elven user to get close to me. After saying that, Athena's body turned into light particles and floated back to Noah's bedside. She then condensed into a platinum sword and laid down quietly. Seeing this, Noah couldn't help but feel helpless. However, Athena's words weren't wrong. Although elven users had the right to interact with elves, it was only a right. If any elven user could form a good relationship with a high-ranked elf, there wouldn't be so many elven users who could only form contracts with middle-ranked or low-ranked elves. Although Linley and the others were excellent elven users who could form contracts with high-ranked elves, it wasn't that easy to form a contract with a humanoid elf of the highest rank. At least, until now, other than himself, Noah had only seen two people who had formed contracts with high-ranked elves. One was Liliana Shubble. The other was Grey Vaz. The former was the strongest sword dancer, the idol of all the witches in the continent. The latter was the strongest elven user, the peak of all elven users in the continent. Only these two had formed contracts with high-ranked elves. One could imagine how difficult it was to form a contract with a high-ranked elf. In addition, Athena was a goddess, so she naturally wouldn't bother to form a cheap exchange. Not to mention Athena, even Aster didn't have a good relationship with Linley and the others. They could only be considered acquaintances and were somewhat familiar with each other. And this was only because Linley and the others had interacted with Aster for a period of time, so it was difficult for them to gain Aster's recognition. From this, it could be seen how difficult it was to form a relationship with a high-ranked elf. Noah was able to obtain the contracts of the two highest-ranking elves. Furthermore, one of them had sworn an oath with him for eternity, while the other was his authority, and it was almost impossible for her to betray him. This could really be said to be a blessing of 3 lifetimes. Well, it's much better than when I was the god of disobedience. When she was still the god of disobedience, because she was devoured by the unruliness of her path, Athena treated humans as dirt and killed them whenever she wanted. Now, Athena was only unwilling to form cheap exchanges with humans, which was already very good. Thinking of this, Noah patted Aster's slender back. Aster, it's time to get up. Ugh. Aster blinked and then slowly opened his eyes. He rubbed his eyes sleepily and cutely yawned. Master, good morning, good morning. Noah patted Aster's head dotingly. It's time to get up. Okay, Aster got up with a trace of sleepiness. In the next moment, Aster was like Athena. Amidst a burst of light particles, he turned into a small silver sword and quietly laid in front of Noah. As expected, it's hard to form a relationship with a high-ranked elf. Noah had no choice but to leave such a comment. Wearing the only male uniform in the Elven Academy, Noah came out of his bedroom and went to the living room. As soon as he opened the door, the aroma of black tea wafted into Noah's nose. Noah's eyes couldn't help but brighten. "Oh, it smells good. Is there a share for me?" As soon as he said this, several intense gazes landed on Noah's face, causing Noah to be stunned. Chapter 1756. Only now did Noah notice. In the living room, at a small round table, 4 girls were sitting opposite each other, holding cups of black tea in their hands. There were some refreshments on the table in front of them, as if they were having a tea party. Among the 4 girls, besides Lindsley, the other 3 were also Noah's acquaintances. Of course, apart from these 3 girls, Carol was also present, but she stood behind Lindsley, looking like a standard maid. Looking at the 3 girls sitting with Lindsley, Noah was surprised. "So you're all back?" Of the 3 girls, one had flame-like twin ponytails, one had long purple hair, and the last one had a white ribbon tying her sky-blue hair into a single ponytail. They were the other members of the fairy tale team. Claire, Fayanna, and Alice were in a group of 3. "So slow," Claire said in a petulant manner, as if she was throwing a tantrum. "Even if we haven't resumed our lessons, you've slept for too long. However, in order not to disturb your rest, we temporarily held a tea party here." Fayanna smiled mischievously. "Of course, boys have a lot of trouble in the morning. I know about this. I hope I didn't disturb you." "Boys have a lot of trouble in the morning?" Alice frowned, looking at Noah with some confusion. "Boys have a lot of trouble in the morning? Do you need my help?" "Help?" Fayanna looked at Alice in surprise. Then, she giggled. "I didn't expect the captain of the Knights to be so daring. It's really surprising." "Daring?" Alice was confused. "What does that mean?" "Fayanna, can you not speak in riddles?" Claire said with dissatisfaction. "What kind of trouble can boys have in the morning? Is it daring to just help a little?" "That's right." Lindsley drank her tea elegantly, also puzzled. Could it be that boys hide something scary in the morning? "Well, for us, it is indeed a bit scary." Fayanna couldn't help but laugh. "If you're curious, you can ask Noah if he can show you." Hearing this, Carol, who was standing behind Lindsley, couldn't help but laugh secretly. The 3 girls, who didn't know what was going on, turned their attention back to Noah, their eyes full of curiosity. Claire said directly, "That's it, let us see." "See your head." Noah's eyes twitched. "Are you girls really talking about such an unhealthy topic early in the morning?" Unhealthy topic?" The 3 pure girls immediately blushed. Fayanna?" Claire glared at Fayanna with a red face. So you're talking about the topic of sex?" Fiona showed an innocent expression. "Is it still too early for you?" "Of course, Fayanna, you're shameless. You still don't have the self-awareness of being a princess?" Linciliai's face was red as she retorted. "This is unbelievable." Seeing Claire, Lindsley, Fayanna, and Alice quarreling, Noah sighed inwardly. "It's been so long, but you guys are still the same." This sentence immediately attracted the glares of the 4 girls. "If that's the case, aren't you the same?" "Claire, after all, it's only been a month." "Fayanna, I don't think there's anything wrong with me being like this." "Alice, as a noble, I've always been leading by example. There's nothing to pick on." Lindsley, these were the rebuttals of the 4 girls. In this regard, Noah really wanted to say that in terms of personality, the 4 of them had some areas that he couldn't complain about. But there was no benefit in saying this, so forget it. All right, Mr. Noah, please don't stand there. Come and sit here. Carol pulled out a seat for Noah with a smile. The ladies have been waiting for you for a long time. Not knowing if it was intentional, Carol helped Noah move his seat to Lindsay's side with a smile on her face. Except for Noah, no one else noticed this small movement. They continued to drink their black tea with a look of indifference. Noah could only shrug and sit next to Lindsay under Carol's giggling. Then, Noah asked his 4 teammates. Since you're all back, that means you've all finished your tasks, right? The reason why the Fairy Tale team had postponed a month's ranking competition and applied for a month's leave was because the 4 girls had their own matters to attend to. Claire took this opportunity to visit her parents who she hadn't had the chance to visit before and who were still in prison. Lindsay, Alice, and Fayanna returned to their homes and reported the good news of qualifying for the Elven Sword Dance Festival to their families. Because of the long journey and the need to socialize due to their status, the 4 girls needed a month's time to complete this goal. Since they had rushed back, it meant that there were no problems. No matter what, the Elven Sword Dance Festival is about to start. How could we not come back? Claire said as she puffed out her chest that didn't undulate at all. Also, in this month, I was allowed to enter the library that my family used to own. I learned a lot from there and my strength improved a lot. How much can you improve if you only study by yourself? Lindsay said to Claire, not to be outdone. I also asked the Elven Knights in my family to help me train. My strength will definitely improve more than Claire's. I also retrained my skills a little, Alice said with a serious expression. At this time, every bit of improvement counts. That's something we can't do anything about. Fayanna sighed deeply. After all, if we want to emerge victorious in the Elven Sword Dance Festival, we have to defeat the strongest sword dancer. The girls all fell silent. No one knew that the 4 girls had their own reasons for participating in the Elven Sword Dance Festival. Claire wanted to understand the truth behind her sister's betrayal of the Elven King. Lindsay wanted to rescue her frozen sister. Alice wanted to inherit Versilia's wish. Fayanna wanted to take back everything she had lost when she was demoted to a lost elven princess. In other words, the 4 of them had their own reasons for not losing. However, his opponent was the existence known as the strongest sword dancer, the target of all elven envoys. Would they be able to defeat such an existence? Not to mention these 4 girls, even if it was anyone else, they wouldn't have much confidence. However, Noah still wanted to say, "Leave Renasubble to me." The group of 4 girls immediately cast their gazes on Noah at the same time. Do you have a chance of winning? Alice couldn't help but ask. Although you are indeed very strong, can you guarantee that you can defeat Renasubble? Indeed, I can't guarantee it because I still don't know the full extent of Leanna Subble's strength. But no matter what, I did have a brief confrontation with her, even if we weren't serious at that time. Noah smiled indifferently. Moreover, you aren't the only ones who have grown in this month. I also have a trump card. Trump card? The girls were curious. What trump card? Noah touched the elven mark on the back of his hand, and sensed the aura of Athena on it. He said with a deep meaning. You will know in the future. Seeing that Noah didn't seem to want to reveal it directly, the girls didn't pursue the matter. In any case, Noah's strength was indeed very strong. There was no doubt about this. Since Noah could deal with Renasubble, it couldn't be better. Thinking back to the beautiful sword dance between Noah and Ren, Claire, Lindsay, Fayanna, and Alice were fascinated. Just like that, the day of the Elven Sword Dance Festival gradually arrived. Chapter 1757. On this day, the sun was shining brightly and there were no clouds in the sky. The weather was not bad. Early in the morning, the entire Elven Academy was bustling with noise and excitement. Almost all the students came out of their dormitories and started walking in one direction. That direction was the direction of the gate that led to the elemental elves' world. The largest ceremony of the Elven Sword Dance Festival was not held in the modern world, but in the elemental elves' world. And it was the elemental elves' world Saint Realm. In the elemental elves' world, there were 5 Saint Realms. The 5 Saint Realms belonged to the 5 elven kings. In the Saint Realms, people could mine special elven ores. That elven ores were the blood of the elven king. One had to know that ordinary elven ores could only seal a portion of the elven power and use it. Its effects were very limited. However, the blood of the elven king could seal a portion of the power of high elves and unleash great power and effects. It was a true national treasure that even people with money and authority could not buy. Once, the self-proclaimed demon king, Geo-Inzak, who was actually a fake, used the blood of the elven king that sealed the power of the elven king, who could control a large number of elves, to disguise himself as an elven envoy and appeared in front of Noah. Later on, that guy almost died under Versilia's bombardment. The blood of the elven king was taken away by Versilia and she used it to make a deal with the merchant of the Skeleton Alliance, Vivian, to transplant a large number of spell engravings. That kind of national treasure could allow an ordinary person to control a large number of elves. Its value was enough to exchange for a large number of spell engravings. Its value could be imagined. The blood of the elven king was an elven ore that could only be mined in the Saint Realm. However, only which G of the gods' parliament who served the elven king could enter the Saint Realm. However, during the Elven Sword Dance Festival, the Saint Realm would be open to ordinary people. In other words, every Elven Sword Dance Festival was held in the Elemental Elves' World Saint Realm. As the only gate in the Elven Academy that could lead to the Elemental Elves' world, the students naturally gathered there. This was because today was the day that the top 3 teams would go to the venue of the Elven Sword Dance Festival. In one of the rooms in the dormitory of the Crow class, Noah was looking at a pile of messy suitcases in front of him. He was speechless. Is it necessary to bring so much luggage? In response to Noah's sigh, Claire, Linley, Fianna, and Alice all raised their heads and looked into the distance, as if they didn't know anything. However, there was no doubt that all the luggage here belonged to the 4 girls. Noah narrowed his eyes, squatted down, and rummaged through the luggage. You. What are you doing? Claire, how dare you rummage through a lady's belongings? How rude. Lindsay Lay, are you looking for our undergarments? Fianna asked. WH. Are you that kind of person? Alice, the group of 4 girls all protested loudly. However, Noah didn't care about them at all. He continued rummaging through the luggage and found a bunch of messy things. Among them, there were beads, cups, fans, whips, candles, and even animal ears and tails. Looking at these things, Noah's mouth twitched, and he looked at the 4 girls with a strange expression. Whose things are these? Claire, Linley, and Alice immediately shook their heads. Only Fianna didn't mince her words. These are all mine. Let me ask first. Noah narrowed his eyes and looked at Fianna. What are you going to do with these things? These are prayer tools that will be used in the Kagura ritual, Fianna answered frankly. These are things that might come in handy. Prayer tools? Noah looked at Fianna suspiciously. Really? Do you think I'm lying? Fianna teased with a smile. Or do you think these things have some special uses? Wasn't that natural? Beads, cups, and fans were fine, but what about whips, candles, and even animal ears and tails? They didn't look like prayer tools, but sex toys. However, Noah didn't have any knowledge in the Kagura ritual, and Fianna's words had no loopholes, so he couldn't refute. So, Noah had no choice but to put those things back into the box, and took out a large number of dolls from another box. That's mine. Alice raised her hand weakly and said embarrassedly. If the journey is lonely, these dolls can come in handy. If the journey is lonely, they can come in handy. What are you going to do with these dolls? If you really feel lonely, borrowing the so-called prayer tools from Fianna should be more useful, right? Noah resisted the urge to complain, silently put all the dolls into the box, and took out another box. There was a tea set in this box. This is mine. Lindsley combed her hair and said matter-of-factly. As a noble, we have to maintain elegance no matter when and where. Not to mention, if the journey is lonely, we can hold a tea party. This is a necessary item. Lonely journey again? Just how afraid are you girls of being lonely? Noah was speechless. He could only put down the box, take out another box, and open it. As a result, Noah was dumbfounded. Because, in this box, there were books. Not ordinary books. At least, that was the title on the cover that Noah saw. Master and Maid. The Kidnapped Princess. The Use of My Holy Sword. Whips and Candles. Just by looking at these titles, Noah understood. How bad were the contents of these books? Ah! At the same time, Claire shouted with a red face and rushed over. She closed the box and threw it at Noah in exasperation. Who told you to open this box? Noah hurriedly dodged Claire's peerless dance and also shouted. Who told you to bring that terrible thing? Terrible thing? Lindsley was curious. What terrible thing did you bring? Let me see. Oh, Claire is bolder than I thought. Fianna was full of interest. Lend it to me. You. Did you bring something shameless? Alice's pretty face was red, and she shouted while gnashing her teeth. Don't bring me that kind of thing. Do you want us to be ridiculed? I'll confiscate it all. Saying this, the three girls pounced in Claire's direction. Wah! Don't take my things. Claire's things are my things. Lindsley, what's wrong with letting me see? Fianna, confiscated. All confiscated. Alice, get out of my way. Do you want to turn into charcoal? Claire, suddenly, the four girls were in a mess, tangled together, and even rolled on the ground. Their skirts were flipped up, and the beautiful scenery inside was seen by Noah. Noah could only turn his head and look at the scenery outside the window. He covered his face as if he couldn't bear to look at it. What kind of teammates are these? Although the whole process was very noisy, the girls still knew their limits. When it was about time to set off, they stopped playing, took their luggage, and walked towards the elemental elven realm's gate. When Noah's group arrived at the gate, there were already many students gathered there. These students were all here to send off the participants of the Elven Sword Dance Festival. Unfortunately, no one in Noah's group came to send them off. There was no other reason. They didn't have any other friends in Alicia Elven Academy. Only Alice exchanged a few pleasantries with the members of the Wind King Knights before bidding them farewell. Clank. At a certain moment, the gate to the elemental elven realm bloomed with light. Only at this moment, the gate to the elemental elven realm was open. Noah's group looked at each other, and then followed the other two groups into the light. Chapter 1758. This place was a forest. It was a forest with lush trees. The species of trees were a little strange, and they couldn't be found in the modern world. In the forest, there was a vast lake. The water in the lake was very clear, so clear that the surface of the water was as bright as a mirror. Whether it was the forest or the lake, they were all emitting a faint light. Like fireflies, the light floated in the air, creating a very dreamy atmosphere. Upon closer inspection, there was actually a ship docked on the lake. It was a ship with a streamlined cabin like a whale, but the surface wasn't made of steel, but of wood. It wasn't an ordinary ship, but an airship. In front of the airship, a group of teachers from the Elven Academy of Alicia were lined up neatly. The person in the lead was the principal of the Elven Academy of Alicia, Grey Vath. Clank. In the forest, a ring-like square formation suddenly bloomed with light. All the teachers of the Elven Academy of Alicia, including Grey Vath, looked up and looked over. In the light, a group of students in pure white uniforms slowly took shape in the void and appeared from the square formation. Noah opened his eyes. As soon as he opened his eyes, Noah met Grey Vath's eyes. Grey Vath stared at Noah, and then led the teachers over. The students' faces immediately tensed up. They stood up straight, and traces of nervousness appeared on their faces. It wasn't only because the person in the lead was the principal of the Elven Academy of Alicia, but also because the most powerful elven envoy on the continent was right in front of them. The students didn't know that Grey Vath had lost her ability as an elven envoy a month ago. However, even if she lost her ability as an elven envoy, Grey Vath's prestige still couldn't be underestimated. Next, you will represent the Audisia Empire and go to the Holy Realm of Ragnar-Yith. Grey Vath's sharp gaze swept across the students as she spoke. Ragnar-Yith is the territory of the Wind Elf King, and it is also the venue of this year's Elven Sword Dance Festival. The last time the Elven Sword Dance Festival was held there was 74 years ago. In other words, it has been 74 years since anyone other than the House of Gods has entered there. Do you see the airship on the other side of the lake? Grey and Vath pointed in the direction of the airship. Next, you will board that ship, which will take you to the Holy Realm of Ragnar-Yith. Everyone's eyes immediately turned to the airship. Under such circumstances, Gravath continued to speak. That ship doesn't belong to the Alicia Elven Academy, nor does it belong to the Audisia Empire. That's why there are already teams from several countries on it. Don't embarrass yourself if you follow them to the venue. Otherwise, you'll become the shame of the entire Audisia Empire. Hearing this, the expressions of the group of students became even more nervous. At this moment, Grey and Vath looked at the teacher beside her. Distribute the information. A teacher immediately nodded and distributed 3 sets of information to the captains of the 3 teams. Noah also received a share of the loot. This is some information about the teams of the other countries that the Empire has gathered. I'm giving it to you now. I hope that it will be of help to you. Also, I hope that you won't have any regrets during the Elven Sword Dance Festival. Grey and Vath looked at everyone. That's all I want to say. Is everyone clear? Yes. The young girls shouted in unison. Very good. Grey and Vath nodded. Then, she led the teachers to the side. Then, board the airship to the Elven Sword Dance Festival. Everyone looked at each other in unison. Then, one by one, they stepped forward and walked towards the ship. Noah also led Claire, Linley, Fayanna, and Alice forward with the other 4 girls. When Noah passed by Grey and Vath, a soft voice entered his ears. I'm counting on you. Noah's footsteps paused for a moment. Then, he recovered without a trace and boarded the airship as if nothing had happened. Just like that, under the gaze of Grey, Vath, and the teachers, the airship slowly floated up and turned around, flying towards the other side of the sky. After boarding the airship, the 3 teams from Alicia Elven Academy split up. On the airship, no matter which country they were from, every team was allocated a cabin. The walls were all made of marble, and the floor was covered with a red velvet carpet embroidered with beautiful embroidery. Undoubtedly, this airship was made of wood, but the interior was made of marble. It was somewhat inconceivable. As soon as they entered the cabin, the 4 young ladies neatly laid on the sofa, as if they were exhausted, and sprawled on the sofa. Seeing this, Noah was helpless. Grey, Vath just said that there are teams from other countries on this airship. She told us not to embarrass ourselves. You guys are like this, aren't you taking it too lightly? Does it matter? Claire said lazily. Anyway, it's in the room. No one will see. It doesn't matter if we relax a little, right? The other young ladies all nodded and expressed the same opinion. Noah sighed and sat down on the sofa. He began to flip through the information given by the Academy. The information did indeed record the information of the teams from other countries. Noah looked at this information seriously until he turned to a page. Looking at the information recorded on it, Noah exclaimed in surprise. Liana Subble is representing the Alphys Empire? That one sentence stirred up everyone's reaction. WH. What? The group of young girls stood up in shock. The Alphys Empire. It was a small country sandwiched between the Ordesia Empire and the Draco Duchy of Draco. The country mainly produced elven ores mined from mines. However, they did not make money from elven ores. Instead, they made a fortune from the mining and trading of magical equipment. The so-called magical equipment referred to some tools that were different from normal tools. Some of these tools had special effects, while some had sealed elves inside them. They were very precious. Especially the magical equipment that had sealed elves inside them, they were even more precious. After all, sealed elves were usually very powerful elves. Tools that had powerful elves inside them, no matter who it was, would be tempted. The Alphys Empire was a country that specialized in mining magical equipment that had been passed down since ancient times from various ruins and sold them, thus becoming rich. In addition, this country also secretly provided elves to other big countries and sold them as goods, thus making a lot of profit. Moreover, the headquarters of the black market merchant organization, the Skeleton Alliance, was also located in this country. Therefore, the Alphys Empire was a country that was very popular. The rumors that spread from this country were basically all negative. Why? Linley was very surprised. Why is that Lena Schubel representing the theocracy of Alphys? That's right. Alice frowned. How did that small country with only negative rumors get involved with the strongest sword dancer? That's impossible, right? Even Phaeana was doubtful. That person would not fight for such a country. That's right. Even Claire was on her side. Is there a mistake somewhere? While the girls were surprised, Noah remembered one of the negative rumors in the Alphys Empire. Is that the origin of the Demon King's faith? The Demon King's faith. It meant that the Demon King was the object of faith. Just like how some people believed in terrorism, the Demon King who had brought unimaginable disasters to the whole continent also had his own faith. The idea of the Demon King's faith began to appear in the Alphys Empire. In addition, the capital of the country was the birthplace of Demon King Solomon. The believers of the Demon King firmly believed that Demon King Solomon would reincarnate and come to the Alphys Empire again, leading the country and ruling the whole continent. Therefore, the Alphys Empire was the base of the believers of the Demon King. Could it be that Lena Schubel was representing the Alphys theocracy because of this? Chapter 1759. Although she was not a male, it was a fact that Lena Schubel had inherited the power of the Dark Elf King and could control it freely. In other words, there were definitely many people who believed that Lena Schubel was the Demon King. The Alphys Empire was the headquarters of magic believers and the birthplace of the former Demon King Solomon. In that case, as the Demon King, it was not strange for Lena Schubel to have a relationship with the Alphys Empire. Not to mention, Lena Schubel's contracted elf was Lestia, one of the contracted elves of Demon King Solomon. As the contracted elf of Demon King Solomon, Lestia should be very clear about the situation of the Alphys Empire. It was not strange for her to be able to have a relationship with the Alphys Empire. Thinking of this, Noah browsed through the information about Lena Schubel and confirmed the name of Lena Schubel's team. The team name is Purgatory Apostles? How should he put it? This team name did not have the style of Lena Schubel at all. Instead, it gave people a feeling that it was very suitable for the Alphys Empire. At this moment, dong! Accompanied by a dull thud, the entire cabin began to shake violently. Ah! Claire, Lindsley, Viviana, and Alice did not have time to react. Caught off guard, they screamed subconsciously and all fell to the ground. Among them, Lindsley directly fell on Noah, as if she was sitting on Noah's arms. In a standard riding position, her whole body pressed on Noah's body. Suddenly, Lindsley's beautiful body kept rubbing against Noah's body with the violent shaking of the airship, causing Noah to almost lose his self-control. Usually, he did not notice it. Only now did Noah realize that Lindsley's body was actually so good. At least, even with 2 layers of the Elven Academy uniform, Noah could clearly feel the softness of Lindsley's ample bosom and the smoothness of her thighs clamped against his body. This level of contact was enough to stir the body and mind of a healthy man. At the same time, Linley finally realized her current situation. Under her shyness, her pretty face and ears turned crimson at the same time. For a pure and innocent young lady, the impact of this kind of intimate contact should not be inferior to the accidental kiss last time, right? However, now was not the time to care about this. Dong! Another muffled crash sounded, and the entire airship shook even more violently. Ah! The young misses all cried out in grief. Only Noah, who remained calm, instinctively hugged Lin Silei tightly as he steadied himself. Through the window, he saw the outside of the airship. Over there, a huge shadow was attacking the flying ship. Dong! Under the heavy crash, the airship shook violently in the sea of clouds, splashing up pieces of wood. The hull of the airship was destroyed bit by bit. In the cabin, elf users wearing military uniforms and uniforms of different countries came out of the cabin and came to the deck. Noah and the others also came out of the cabin while enduring the violent shaking. Then, all of them saw it. On the side of the airship, there was a huge monster. It was a monster that looked like a ray but had a single ferocious red eye on its head. Its body was half the size of the airship. Looking at the monster, Noah exclaimed in surprise. "Is that a magic beast?" "No, it's not a magic beast," Fianna said with a serious expression. "That's a military elf." "Military elf?" Noah froze slightly. The so-called military elf referred to a type of elf that was different from the contracted elf. The contracted elf was an existence that provided strength to the elf user through signing a contract with the elf user and fighting alongside the elf user. On the other hand, the military elf didn't need to sign a contract with the elf user to be controlled. Its advantage was that it had a wide range of uses and didn't have any requirements for the ability of the elf user. As long as one had a certain level of aptitude as a witch, one could control the military elf to a certain extent. In other words, elves that were adjusted to military elves couldn't exert their full strength. For example, military elves couldn't transform into elf devices like contracted elves, nor could they provide divine energy support to the elf user to use elf magic. At the same time, their innate strength would be limited. However, even if they were limited, such elves that could be controlled without a contract were very useful in all aspects. For example, right now, the elf user who attacked the airship didn't see any trace of him at all, but the military elf attacked the airship under the control of the elf user. Because there was no contract, anyone could control the elves, and no one knew who launched the attack. Therefore, military elves were generally used in military applications. They were most often seen in wars. Of course, the more powerful the military elf, the more elven users needed to work together to control it. For example, among the military elves, there were some elves that were very difficult to control that ordinary elven users couldn't use alone. Those elves were classified as tactical military elves. If one wanted to successfully summon tactical level military elves, they would need to use a group of specially trained elven trainers to operate them. The power of these tactical military elves was even comparable to that of high-level elves. Their destructive power was very strong, and they were often used in wars to wipe out thousands of troops. In addition, Noah also heard that above the tactical military elves, there was a type of strategic military elves. That level of military elves was so powerful that without hundreds of elven users to perform the ritual, they absolutely couldn't be controlled. Their destructive power was peerless, and they were even sealed and not allowed to be used. If a military sprite of that level were to cause trouble, not to mention a city, even several cities could be destroyed. As for the tactical military elves, they also had the power to destroy a small city. The military elf in front of him was so energetic to deal with a mere airship, so it probably hadn't reached the tactical level, let alone the strategic level. However, to ordinary elven users, the threat of a military elf was already big enough. Why would a military elf appear in a place like this? Claire first asked this question, then immediately thought of something, and her expression also became serious. I see. You want to eliminate your opponent? The Elven Sword Dance Festival wasn't just a simple sacrificial ritual. It also symbolized the meaning of war between countries. After all, the country that obtained victory in the Elven Sword Dance Festival would receive the protection of the Elven King for many years, greatly increasing the country's power. This was the reason why many countries, led by the Austrian Empire, invested so much effort in nurturing Elven users and actively participated in the Elven Sword Dance Festival. Of course, some countries would rather use unscrupulous means to obtain victory. The Elven users on this airship were all participating teams from various countries. Therefore, it wasn't strange at all if a country sent out a military elf to eliminate a threat in pursuit of victory. That kind of thing doesn't matter. Alice unsheathed the knight's sword at her waist and stared closely at the ray elves outside the sea of clouds. Let's think of a way to deal with this military elf first. With that, Alice prepared to charge out. Wait! Noah immediately grabbed Alice's hand. Wah! Alice immediately cried out in surprise, her pretty face turning red as she cried out in panic. Hand! Your hand! It's just holding hands. Noah subconsciously complained. Why are you making such a fuss? What? What do you mean it's just holding hands? Alice blushed shyly and glared at Noah rather angrily. This is my first time. Noah didn't have the energy to complain. At that moment, Noah could only say, look around. Hearing this, Alice was slightly startled and immediately looked around. Chapter 1760. Dong! The huge ray sprite slammed into the airship, causing it to shake violently. Wood shavings sputtered from the airship. The airship floating in the sea of clouds suffered a huge impact, and its altitude dropped little by little. Under such an onslaught, the Elven envoys from various teams from various countries had gathered on the deck. However, they chose to stay where they were amidst a wave of whispers. They did not make a move, but instead quietly observed their surroundings. Seeing this scene, not only Alice, but also Claire, Lindsley, and Viviana were stunned. Why? Lindsley asked in confusion. Why didn't anyone make a move? Undoubtedly, the airship was under attack and could fall at any time. Why didn't anyone make a move? Although the ray sprite's destructive power was shocking, it wasn't impossible to deal with. Even if it was a threat to ordinary Elven messengers, each of the Elven messengers here was an elite from their respective country. They shouldn't be afraid of a military sprite that wasn't even at the tactical level. Not to mention, the Elven messengers here were all in a team. Even if one person couldn't take down the attacking military sprite, it shouldn't be difficult for the whole team to take it down. Under such circumstances, why didn't anyone make a move? Seeing the confused expressions of the girls, Noah explained. These people didn't make a move because they wanted to hide their strength and observe the other Elven messengers of the other teams. The girls weren't idiots. Therefore, after Noah's reminder, everyone understood. If I were to make a move here, I would definitely expose some of my strength. Noah smiled indifferently when he saw the expressions of understanding on the girls' faces. That wouldn't do any good for the upcoming Elven Sword Dance Festival. So that's why no one made a move? Viviana asked in realization. On one hand, they didn't want to expose their strength. On the other hand, they were waiting for the others to make a move so that they could observe the strength of the Elven messengers of the other teams and formulate countermeasures for the competition. That's right. Noah nodded. I even suspect that the purpose of the military sprite attacking this airship was not to eliminate the sprite users here and eliminate the threat. Instead, it wanted to use this opportunity to observe the strength of the sprite users here and make plans for the upcoming competition. It's possible, Claire agreed. If you want to eliminate your competitors, then sending a military sprite of this level to attack will not succeed at all. That's right. Noah smiled faintly as he looked around. Since that's the case, it's best that we don't do anything. But are we just going to watch that military elf wreak havoc? Alice frowned. If this continues, the airship will definitely fall. If it falls, then so be it. After all, the airship is the property of the House of Gods. It has nothing to do with any country. Besides, with the level of the elves here, no one will die from falling. Noah shrugged. Let's wait and see. Hearing that, the group of girls looked at each other and nodded helplessly. In fact, Noah didn't mind exposing his strength. Anyway, with the level of that Ray sprite, Noah didn't even need to use the elven device. He could deal with it easily and wouldn't expose much of his strength. However, this would definitely arouse the vigilance of the teams from the other countries, causing them to target Noah specifically during the competition, or even join forces. Noah didn't want to create more trouble for himself. Besides, if that military elf was really sent by another country to observe the strength of the sprite users who attacked, wouldn't Noah's actions be in accordance with their wishes? Noah didn't have the hobby of being played like a monkey by others. Therefore, Noah chose to watch instead of jumping out to take the lead. Just as Noah expected, the other teams didn't choose to make a move. They were all in an uproar while watching from the deck. Dong! Finally, with a heavy muffled sound, the entire belly of the airship was smashed into pieces, causing the entire airship to begin to fall to the ground. This time, the sprite users on the deck couldn't remain calm. Although they were all elites of their respective countries, the sprite users who could participate in the Elven Sword Dance Festival were restricted to those below the age of 20. This proved that these sprite users were all young girls. Under the threat of the airship crashing, the well-trained sprite users were still able to remain calm. However, some of the weaker sprite users started to panic. It's about to fall. Noah grabbed onto the guardrail to stabilize himself, and shouted in Alice's direction. Alice. Got it. Alice was already prepared. She closed her eyes, and a phosphorescent divine energy rippled from her body. Wind, please give me strength. A gust of wind began to swirl around Noah and the rest, lifting them off the ground and floating them. At the same time, the teams from the other countries also began to use their abilities to break away from the airship. Just like that, the airship plummeted towards the ground, and finally crashed heavily into the edge of a forest. In an instant, dust and wood shavings flew everywhere. A small part of the ground was dug up by the heavy impact, and it trembled slightly. As for the elven envoys who had left the airship, they all landed safely on the ground, avoiding the fate of the airship being destroyed and their lives being lost. Just like what Noah said, the elves here wouldn't die because of the loss of the pendant. Pooh. At this moment, the ray sprite that destroyed the airship descended from mid-air, and let out a hair-raising roar. With a flick of its tail, its huge body crashed downwards like a meteorite. It seemed that destroying the airship wasn't enough to make the military sprite leave. No matter what the purpose was, the target of this military sprite was the sprite users here. How could it just destroy the airship and leave? Seeing the huge ray sprite crashing down like a meteorite, Claire, Linley, Fayanna, and Alice couldn't keep calm anymore, and some divine energy began to surge from their bodies. Only Noah raised his eyebrows, and the corners of his mouth slowly rose. Finally, someone can't help but make a move. As soon as Noah finished speaking, a cold and awe-inspiring voice rang out. Holy Spirit of the pitch-black evil dragon, I hereby command thee, heed my command, and destroy my enemy. The moment the stern voice sounded above the forest, a pitch-black light suddenly flashed and rushed into the air. In the pitch-black light, a huge dragon with a pitch-black luster slowly appeared. The dragon opened its ferocious mouth, and a shocking amount of divine energy gathered inside. In the next moment, the divine power transformed into a violent black flame that shot out and engulfed the entire body of the ray fish spirit that was charging over. The ray sprite didn't even have time to scream before it was incinerated in the pitch-black flames and disappeared without a trace. Seeing this scene, all the sprite users present widened their eyes. Noah looked up and gazed at the back of the pitch-black dragon. A young girl was standing there. She was a young girl with shoulder-length black hair and a rather decent appearance. The young girl wore a beret on her head, and she wore a military uniform that didn't have any wrinkles on it. It was so thin that it outlined her perfect figure. However, rather than calling it a military uniform, it looked more like a uniform from somewhere. Not only did the skirt not reach her knees, but she also wore black stockings on her legs and a pair of boots on her feet. She looked quite charming. Looking at the young girl, Noah called out her name in a low voice. The trump card of the Dragon Duchy of Doragonia, Leola Lancaster. Perhaps she heard Noah's whisper, but on the pitch-black dragon, the young girl named Leola turned her head and looked in Noah's direction. Their eyes met. At this moment, Noah and Leola only had eyes for each other. Chapter 1761. The Dragon Duchy of Doragonia. It was a large military country located on the west side of the Odisha Empire. In terms of national power, there was still a gap between them and the Odisha Empire. However, it was still one of the largest countries on the continent and definitely not below any other country. Moreover, the Dragon Duchy of Doragonia worshipped the dragon tribe, which was at the top of all magic beasts. They were inclined to communicate with dragon elves. Every elven envoy that could contract a dragon elf was extremely powerful. Among them, Leola Lancaster was one of the best. Not only was Leola Lancaster the trump card of the Dragon Duchy of Doragonia, she was also the leader of the Dragon Emperor Knights that represented the country at the Elven Sword Dance Festival. In the Dragon Duchy of Doragonia, Leola was revered as the daughter of the Dragon Duchy. In other words, Leola was equivalent to the princess of the Dragon Duchy of Doragonia. In the information released by the Elven Academy, she was evaluated to be at least on the same level as Versilia Eva. And Versilia was publicly recognized as the strongest person in the Elven Academy before Noah entered the academy. Moreover, at that time, Versilia had transplanted her spell inscriptions and was quite powerful. She was enough to be the trump card of the Odisha Empire. Leola was at least on the same level as Versilia. This was enough to show how powerful this elven envoy was. In fact, it was clear from Leola's performance just now. She had the strength to defeat a military elf in one strike. She was probably one of the most powerful contestants in this Elven Sword Dance Festival. Of course, Noah and Lyanna Subble were exceptional existences. Both of them had the strength of an elven king and couldn't be counted. The other elven envoys who didn't know all this held their breaths as they watched Leola display her invincible might. Their expressions became somewhat fearful. It was clear that the Elven Sword Dance Festival would be facing an opponent of this level. Those elven envoys were starting to feel that it was truly difficult. Not only the elven envoys, but even Claire, Linley, Fayanna, and Alice's expressions became grave. In the end, it was Claire who softly muttered, "She's very strong." The group of girls nodded one after another. At this moment, the pitch-black dragon in the sky abruptly turned its head and slowly descended. Seeing this scene, the other elven envoys instinctively dodged and retreated to the side. However, Claire, Linley, Fayanna, Alice, and the other girls started to become restless. If I'm not wrong," Linley said uneasily. "That Duke Long seems to be flying towards us, right?" I think so." Fayanna didn't know what to do. What should we do?" "Don't panic," Alice's groups. "No matter what, the other party won't attack us in front of so many people. Don't worry." Alice's group was Dragon Emperor. Elven Envoys of Envoys. Of the Elven of the Dragon Duchy. Dragons of the Dragon of the Dragon. The moment the dragon landed, a gust of wind blew in all directions with the Dragon Duchy as the center. Clang! Immediately after, a pitch-black light blossomed from the Dragon Duchy. The Dragon Duchy turned into a beam of light and gradually turned into a large sword. Leola also landed on the ground. She stretched out her hand and caught the pitch-black sword. After hanging it on her waist, she looked up and gazed at Noah. "You're Noah Doria, right?" That one sentence stunned the group of girls. Noah didn't react strangely and met Leola's gaze. It seems that the Dragon Duchy of Doragonia has collected a lot of information on the teams of other countries. "Of course," Leola said without any pretense. The Dragon Duchy of Doragonia's spying ability is one of the best in the entire continent. We've already obtained information on most of our opponents, let alone a large country like the Osea Empire. You're also the one who defeated Silent Fortress Versilia Eva. How could we not take note of you? In fact, apart from Noah, Versilia was also defeated by Jenna Subble. However, apart from Noah and the others, no one knew that Versilia had gone berserk in the Elven Forest after transplanting a large number of spell inscriptions. Therefore, what Leola said should be the result of Versilia's duel with Noah in the academy before transplanting a large number of spell inscriptions. Noah only shrugged. Thank you for the compliment. I'm flattered. There's no use playing dumb here. Noah Doria, the Dragon Duchy of Doragonia has already gathered a lot of information about you. To us, you're the most important existence besides the strongest sword dancer, Jenna Subble. Leola stared at Noah. After all, you had a sword dance with the strongest sword dancer, but there was no victor. Isn't that right? Jenna Subble had appeared in the Elven Academy and had a sword dance with the only male Elven envoy on the continent. In the end, there was no victor. This matter was no longer a secret to the countries with good intelligence. After all, Jen didn't hide when she first appeared in the Elven Academy. When she fought with Noah, it was also in full view of everyone. There was no way she could hide it. Of course, she couldn't hide it from a large country like the Dragon Duchy of Doragonia. However, Jenna Subble was the idol of all Elven envoys on the continent. She was known as the strongest sword dancer. Presumably, even if they knew about this, there wouldn't be many who would believe it. Leola looked for Noah because Noah had defeated Versilia. On the other hand, she definitely wanted to test the authenticity of this information. Defeated Versilia. Tied with Jenna Subble. If one were to talk about which one would arouse more vigilance, it would definitely be the latter. After clearly understanding this matter, Noah pretended to be surprised under Leola's gaze. Where did you get this information from? Are you still going to play dumb? Leola had been staring at Noah the whole time. When she saw Noah's surprised expression, her beautiful brows slightly furrowed and her gaze sharpened. Forget it. If you really have that kind of ability, then I'll beat you fair and square during the Elven Sword Dance Festival. No matter if you're the strongest sword dancer or male Elven envoys, if you want to defeat me and my Nidhogg, then come and try. After saying this, Leola slightly raised the pitch-black greatsword hanging at her waist. A faintly discernible pressure emanated from the pitch-black greatsword, before disappearing in an instant. However, Noah and the others still felt it. Nidhogg. Alice stared at the pitch-black greatsword at Leola's waist and muttered. That's the strongest dragon elf in the Dragon Emperor Knights? That's right. My Nidhogg is the strongest dragon elf in the Dragon Emperor Knights. Leola glanced at Alice. You're Versilia Eva's foster sister, right? I'll show you who's stronger in the Elven Sword Dance Festival between my Nidhogg and your foster sister's Citadel Elf. After saying that, Leola turned around and headed back to her party without any hesitation. Only then did the group of young girls relax. What a terrifying pressure. Faena said with a lingering fear. Do we really have to face someone like that at the Elven Sword Dance Festival? Claire, Linley, and Alice also looked uneasy. Seeing the four girls' reactions, Noah didn't say much. It was good to be able to recognize the threat of an opponent. At least, to these four girls, Leola was an unimaginable enemy. Perhaps even if the four of them joined forces, they might not be able to defeat Leola. Leola Lancaster. Noah smiled. Interesting. Chapter 1762. In the end, although the attacking military elves were cleanly dealt with by Leola, the flying ship suffered severe damage and was unable to continue taking off. Without any other choice, the person in charge of the ship could only request assistance from the gods' parliament and have them send another flying ship over. While waiting for the arrival of the flying ship, the elven messengers could only continue to stay where they were and rest. During this time, Just like how Leola found Noah and probed him to a certain extent, the teams of the other countries also took the opportunity to interact with the teams of the other countries. They feigned civility and attempted to obtain as much information as possible that would be beneficial to them. However, there were two teams that didn't send anyone to probe. One was naturally the Dragon Emperor Knights that Leola had previously displayed her invincible prowess. Claire, Linley, Frianna, and Alice weren't the only ones who were extremely fearful of Leola's strength. The rest of the elves were also extremely fearful of Leola and didn't dare to rashly approach and inquire about her strength. The other team was the fairy tale that Noah was in. If it was said that the reason why the teams from the other countries did not test the Dragon Emperor Knights was because they were afraid of Leola, then the reason why they did not test the fairy tale was because they were afraid of her. That's right, afraid. No matter which country the elven messengers were from, they were all afraid of approaching the fairy tale. There was no other reason other than the existence of the male elven messenger Noah in the fairy tale. Like Claire, Linsley, Fianna, and Alice, as pure witches who could communicate with elves, all the elven messengers here were rather pure. It was truly too difficult for them to approach a male that they normally wouldn't have the opportunity to interact with. Therefore, even though many people were curious as to why Leola would find Noah, none of them chose to probe and instead stayed far away. Of course, there would definitely be a lot of private discussions about it. That's a male elven messenger like Demon King Solomon over there? He doesn't seem very scary, don't be fooled by his appearance. That's a male elven messenger, an existence like Demon King Solomon. Yeah. If I approach it rashly, I might be tainted. Maybe I'll be eaten. She might even get pregnant. Are you serious? Of course it's true. Didn't you see that the Demon King already has 4 innocent girls who have been captured? How pitiful, evil Demon King, we must defeat him at the Elven Sword Dance Festival. That's right. If I let him win, I don't know if he will make an outrageous wish. For example, for us to hold hands with him or something like that. Wah. That's too much. Similar discussions like this kept coming from all around, and Noah really had the urge to find a hole to hide in. Especially the part about making an outrageous wish, but in the end, it was to hold hands. Noah had the urge to complain. These girls were so pure and innocent. Did their families know about it? Noah was starting to worry about how these girls were going to get married after they retired. Could it be that there were still people who thought that they could get pregnant just by kissing? With that thought, Noah began to size up the surrounding elven envoys. Quick! Look! That Demon King is looking at us. It's true. Don't look at him. You'll get pregnant if you look at him. Wah! Suddenly, there was a commotion around them. Noah finally understood. He really underestimated the purity of these girls by thinking that they could get pregnant just by kissing. Wasn't this? They were starting to think that they could get pregnant just by looking at Noah. What a trap. Just as Noah felt that it was getting more and more difficult to bear, finally, a new flying ship came from the other side of the sky and slowly landed in front of everyone. Only then did everyone enter the new flying ship in an orderly manner. Under the flying ship's transport, they once again flew in the direction of the Holy Realm. Ragnar Isa. That was the Holy Realm that belonged to the Wind Elf King's territory. The main body of the Holy Realm was an island. It was a huge floating island surrounded by steep mountain ranges, suspended between thick clouds. Looking from afar, that huge floating island looked like a fairy island. It was very beautiful. Riding the flying ship, the elven envoys who were participating in the Elven Sword Dance Festival arrived at the floating island and disembarked at the port. After arriving at the port, the elven envoys would change into teams and take the carriages prepared by the deity ceremonial institution to a tower located in the center of the island. That tower was an ancient relic that could be traced back to the era of the Elven War. During the Elven Sword Dance Festival, that tower was where the participants would stay. While still in the carriage, Noah saw that tower. That tower stood on a small hill. Its appearance was very beautiful, but it didn't lose its dignity. It was surrounded by a lush forest and there was a lake not far away. The environment was very beautiful. After passing through the city gate and entering the tower, the first thing that could be seen was a vast entrance hall. The hall was designed with a high ceiling, and the ceiling was decorated with beautiful arches. Behind the arches was a long corridor of stone pillars covered with carpets. The lighting devices were not lamps, nor were they elven oars. Instead, they were light elves that floated in the air like fireflies. At first, Noah thought that as a relic from thousands of years ago, this place would look very ancient. However, after entering, Noah discovered that although this was a relic, it had been modified many times over the past thousands of years. He could hardly see the original appearance of the relic. However, there were still some ancient carvings on the walls and pillars. As for the walls of the long corridor of stone pillars, there were many colorful paintings hanging on them. Those paintings depicted the elven concubines who directly served the elven king, as well as the victors of the elven sword dance festival. Among them, there was Gray, who had won 24 years ago, and Lillian Asubble, who had won 3 years ago. As Noah looked around these historical sites, he was led to a room by which G of the Gods Parliament. The teams that were preparing to participate in the Elven Sword Dance Festival would all be given a room. However, because Noah was a male elven envoy, the Gods Parliament naturally wouldn't let Noah stay with a bunch of innocent young ladies. Of course, Noah was only one person, so he couldn't get a room of the same size as the rest of the teams. Instead, he was assigned to a small room that was more remote. After that, which G of the Gods Parliament, who was leading the way for Noah, seemed to be really afraid of being sullied by Noah, and hurriedly ran away. Noah could only watch her leave speechlessly as he sat on the bed. Claire, Linley, Fayanna, and Alice should be in the room unpacking their luggage. Because Noah had put all the necessities into the gift card, he didn't bring any extra luggage. Naturally, he didn't need to spend any effort to unpack. Thus, Noah took advantage of this time to continue looking through the information given by the Alicia Elven Academy. According to the information, there were a total of 24 teams participating in the Elven Sword Dance Festival this time. It's much less than I expected. The Elven Sword Dance Festival wasn't something that could be participated in just because one wanted to. Basically, according to the Gods Parliament's allocation, every country could only have one participant. Only a few large countries with many outstanding elven envoys could have more than one participant. For example, the Alphys Empire only had one participant. The Kurna Empire, located in the east, had 2 participants. Apart from the Alicia Empire, there was only one other country that had 3 participants, Holy Georgia. As for the Draco Duchy of Dalagunia, they had 2 participants. I just don't know what kind of people are in the Purgatory Apostles. As soon as he said this, a sweet laughter suddenly sounded from Noah's room. At least, I can tell you that there's someone as scary as Lotus in there. You're tuning into the Dreamy Love Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.